right, here we are. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for Monday, November 8th, 2021. I now call the meeting to order at 6:31. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll call?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Infante.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Urick.
Here. And Councilmember Thomas, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand, place your hand over your heart, repeat the name. I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we have one presentation this evening, the Solvang Senior Center New Building Project. So I'm not sure who's going to speak on behalf of that.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
I'm Jim Richardson. I'm here as the president of the board of directors of the Solvang Senior Center. And to help me with this presentation tonight are Tom Olmsted, Alan Hitt, who are the co-chairs of the capital campaign. And also attending in the audience are some members of our community and the members of the board of directors. You've recently visited our building and have seen the need for replacement. So we'll bring you up to date on the progress toward the completion of our new senior center. Our goal is to start construction at near the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. At this time, we're asking you to support our goal by bringing us back as an agenda item at the next meeting to discuss how we'd like the city to help us with our goal. And with that, Tom Olmsted.
Thank you, Jim. Mayor Urick, council members, and Solvang management, city management. I'm Tom Olmsted, as Jim said, co-chair of the Solvang Senior Center Capital Campaign. The city of Solvang's been part of our success over the decades. During that time, we've grown serving more and more seniors on a very limited budget in a very old and outdated facility, all while delivering exceptional results. Our outcomes include better health and nutrition, but so much more. Seniors have become more connected to our community. They have a stronger sense of well-being and independence. They are able to live at home longer with better outcomes and ancillary services such as family daycare, financial support, improved emotional, intellectual, and physical support. And we're grateful to the city that has historically supported and provided funds for the center. We started our campaign about 3 years ago with a year COVID pause, like other things. Our goal was and still is to build a permanent facility to serve Solvang and the Valley communities for decades to come. Just imagine, when we complete our goal, we can double our membership. We can increase the number of people who can attend each program. We can hold multiple activities concurrently. We can meet the demand for growing senior population in our valley and continue to improve the mind, body, and spirit of our seniors in our community through programs and resources. We also believe we can create new programs we haven't even thought of yet. Intergenerational programs that connect multiple generations, empower seniors' knowledge and wisdom to improve our community, have a state-of-the-art community center for others to use, for example, an evening Zumba class, increased tax services for low-income people, and so on. we need the city's leadership and your vision to expand the community services to the largest growing segment of our population, seniors. At this time, I'd like to show you a video, a short video. Okay, thank you.
Why do you have to be so strict all the time?
Everything okay?
We keep your brother. He doesn't like having any rules. Pause that, please.
It's got two audios at the same time.
Hold on one second, folks. Can you guys see that out here over there? To the light?
That was fun.
Great presentation.
That's over too quick.
Okay, start.
Very appropriate for Halloween.
We keep people alive and thriving and aging actively and help them have the best quality of life that they can.
It's located right in the heart of the San Ynez Valley. The access is easy for everybody to get here. We have great institutions that when you can no longer live at home, you can go to and live well. But right here at the center, we help people stay at home, live well, and stay connected.
I wanted a place where I could meet new people, engage in different ways, and the senior center had some easy ways to get involved. There's classes here, not only Tai Chi, there's yoga, you can learn how to knit, I took an art history class here as well, which was fabulous. I mean, if you're a senior and you need any information, this is the place to come. The Solvang Senior Center is a one-stop shop.
It's a hub to which people come, not just for food and for exercise, but they pick up produce that is delivered from the local farmers.
Senior population is going to continue to grow, and something like this, especially when people come new to a community, is a great way to make contacts in the new community.
It's necessary for seniors to have a place they know they can always go to. It's dependable, it's going to be there.
And, you know, I'm not sure what we would do if we didn't have the Solvang Senior Center here. How would people age in place? Aging in place is such an important aspect for not only Solvang and the Valley, but the United States. We're getting older, and people need a place to, you know, in a way, to be able to stay healthy and stay in their homes and stay engaged in their communities. And the Senior Center really goes a long way in allowing that to happen for so many seniors.
And when people come and I have to turn down, I can't teach you right now this class because I'm already full. It's sad because you see in somebody's eyes that they were looking forward to do something and looking forward for something to help them feel good. So having space and having this place to be able to grow for the Solvang would be great.
And the demand is now there. People like me, those people born after World War II, are all now seniors. It's time to make the kind of investment in the senior center, the center as a whole, for a community center.
Our building now is 2,700 square feet. The new building that we envisioned ended up being 4,700 square feet. So that is our goal. And it will be built in such a manner that somewhere down the line we can expand upon it.
When you enter the first floor through the reception area, that room could look different every time you come because it's been designed to be allowed to be a huge, great room when we need it. But when we don't need it, it can be broken into 3 separate rooms that now can be used simultaneously, concurrently, so that our offerings don't have to stop when we do one program. We can do more. And the same thing happens upstairs. A lounge area where people can sit around and visit and check on our director and ask a question. but 3 other meeting rooms where to have a mahjong class or a knitting class or a book club, or the variety of things we haven't even considered yet.
It just allows us more options to be part of the community.
This is an investment. It's not just an expense. It's the sort of thing that's going to make life better for a long period of time for a lot of people.
It's not just for this generation, it's for future generations. Let's look beyond 50 years. We want to be able to serve our community for an eternity. And we want our community to be able to help and support and serve us as time changes, as people's lives change, as the world changes. We want to be part of that evolution too.
I'm the closer. My name is Alan Hitt. My name is Alan Hitt. I'm at, I remember we used to have our addresses, right? 2540 School Street in Ballard. And I've lived there since '95. This campaign was created directly from a clear need. The existing building is 38 years old. It has a short life remaining, and the maintenance costs are increasing, and it's too small for existing needs and future needs. With that, a growing demand for programs and activities for seniors, and a growing membership that will only increase with increasing population and age. Once completed, we will be able to expand what we do, serving independent Solvang seniors and a broader San Ynez Valley community through our programs and activities. We will also increase our programs by coordinating with the City of Solvang Parks and Recreation to expand senior opportunities, because I know that they would like to participate in that. We are requesting 3 things to go on the agenda. One is first is rent-free use of the American Legion wing of the Vets Hall during our transition on construction. We would like to use the building Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4. And we are very flexible if there are other needs that need to have the building space, we can move and work something out. We think that our transition period will begin about a year from today for construction. Number 2, we would like to have financial support from the City of Solvang for $60,000 for transition cost. The cost would support a trailer for the city, or for our center offices, storage of center equipment, and any added financial support. We need to hire someone to do labor moving back and forth. And we can get an estimate for you for that later. Number 3, we would like the city to waive any fees relating to construction. Sewer hookups, water, and anything relating to construction. The investment will serve thousands of seniors for future decades. Excuse me. The City of Solvang needs to continue to be recognized as a key contributor to the health and well-being of the Solvang senior population, and have noticeable and visible participation on a big project like this located right here in Solvang, and fulfill a vital part of your mission of service to underserved seniors. I think we all have these beliefs in common. Seniors deserve to be valued and respected. Their wisdom and experience are great resources for our community. If we can unlock their power, we can make long-term investments in our seniors like we do for our youth and kids today. The center provides the tools and the resources to allow seniors to live with vitality and resiliency. The new center will enhance the lives of seniors in a broader SYV community for decades. We know this investment is necessary to serve seniors so they can be independent, involved, and live vibrantly with purpose. My mother-in-law, Willie Campbell, used to stand up here regularly to remind the city council the importance of investing for seniors. It's time to do the important lift that Willie knew would be needed to allow the senior center to increase its reach and effectiveness within our community. I am a co-chair, one of 3 of the steering committee. We have been doing this for 4 years. Our goal is $3 million. We have had great success, and we expect to build this community center that'll last for decades. We would like the city to join us to pay it forward for the generations to come. And best of all, it's going to make Solvang and the Valley a better place to live because we have a permanent, beautiful building. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I can already hear Willie.
Mayor, council, is there a general direction to put on the next agenda, or?
That would be fine. Is everybody?
Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
All for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have some suggestions at that time.
Anything else we need to do on that? Sit for now? Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your work and trying to get this thing rolling too. Appreciate it much.
But you have to stay for the whole meeting.
There's always a catch.
Makes it sound short.
Thank you, guys.
So at this time, we are going to be open for public communications. Madam Clerk, would you please read the instructions on the Communication.
Public communications, non-agenda and consent agenda items, written or verbal. The council welcomes your input. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and consent agenda. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comment first.
All right, I have 3 speaker slips, and before we get started, I just want to ask, Lansing, were you wanting to speak on a certain item prior to, or is it during this public comment time? I just wanted to clarify. On this public comment time? Okay, all right. First one up would be Pastor Chris Brown.
Thank you. Greetings, council members. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak in front of this body. As you know, my name is Chris Brown. I'm the pastor of Bethania Lutheran Church here in Solvang. As you also know, during the pandemic, our church has been operating an emergency food distribution for those in our valley who suffer from food insecurity. While much of our life in our valley has started to resume with businesses open and civic events back in motion, food insecurity in this valley is still significantly present. I don't know if the city still has funds reserved for COVID-19 responses or any efforts like this, but if so, I'd like to request additional funds for Bethania's emergency food distribution. For your consideration, I'd also like to offer some information about the food distribution, how we supplement it, and who it serves. The Bethania Emergency Food Distribution is conducted in partnership with the Santa Barbara Food Bank and receives additional food from Veggie Rescue. But because we don't always know what we're getting from these entities, and because we want to offer a minimum yet complete source of nutritional food for people in need, we supplement what we receive with food purchased through private donations and grants. Over the course of the pandemic, we have served well over 1 million pounds of food to those in need. And according to the Santa Barbara Food Bank, we are the 3rd largest emergency food distribution site in all of North County, behind the Allen Hancock and Pacific Christian Angel Food Santa Maria sites. Furthermore, our program is run entirely by volunteer help, which means all proceeds go to feeding people in our valley. When the food distribution started, the majority of people who came to our distribution were people who were unable to work as a result of the pandemic. Our volunteers have gotten to know the people who come through our line on a personal level, and we have heard the stories of their struggles during this time. The vast majority of people who come to our distribution are working full-time jobs, and the majority of those that aren't comprise of the elderly on fixed incomes and folks with disabilities. Only a few that come are homeless, and the vast majority of people are residents in this valley. Those that come are mostly employed in the service industry and in the agricultural industry upon which most of our businesses depend. What we've discovered is that even though most are working full-time jobs with rent and property increases combined with gas and food price increases, their incomes are simply not enough to cover the basic necessities of living in our valley. At the peak of the pandemic, we were serving 1,600 people a week. While we hoped those numbers would drop enough that we could end the food distribution, because of what I just described, our numbers are leveling out at about 1,000 people a week. Due to recent gas and food price increases, they're even going up a little bit. Again, I would like to emphasize that the majority of people coming are fully employed and residents of our valley who need help getting by. If the city has any additional funds reserved for this kind of need, I would ask you to consider giving additional funding to Bethania's food distribution. Thank you so much for both your time and consideration at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Chris. And again, we appreciate everything that you guys do over there. Next one is Lansing Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members, good evening. And first I want to say how pleased I was to be able to see the progress with the senior center presentation before. I'm very glad that A, they have a site there at the Vets Hall, and B, that the Vets Hall will be useful for them during their transition period. I wanted to talk to you this evening about a countywide process that's going on while you're undertaking your own districting process here in Solvang. Of course, most of you are aware that in the county, we're drawing new district boundary lines, and that there's a commission that does that. I know there are some that have felt that somehow City of Solvang and Valley concerns aren't properly represented because of the makeup of the current 3rd district. And there have been some who definitely wanted to change the makeup of that district in an effort to make government go more in the direction they want it to go. But I've got to say that's a difficult argument to make when you consider that 6, if you count our current supervisor, of the last 3rd district supervisors have lived in the San Ynez Valley. So when you go right back there to Bill Wallace and Willie Chamberlain and Gail Marshall and Doreen Firestone and now Joan Hartman, we're getting pretty good representation out of the 3rd district of the way it's put together now. So I've been watching the countywide process, and I am concerned about how they might group us in any changed district. So I was a little surprised to see a potential map put together where we end up in the 4th district. And we're no longer connected to the South Coast, but now we're connected to 3/4 of Orcutt and half of Santa Maria. Now, I was also alarmed to see that there was a letter from one of the mayors of one of the cities, the North County cities, saying that all the city mayors in the whole county, basically, have endorsed this particular plan. And the mayor of Solvang is listed as one of the people who's confirmed on that. Now, subsequently, I learned that a number of those mayors listed hadn't exactly signed on to this. And so, one, I would ask, has the city taken this up as an agenda item to endorse a particular map? And if so, did I miss that somewhere? And then also, if so, I'd say, I really question the wisdom of that. When you look at how we've been represented in the past, as compared to when we would be connected to the 3/4 of Orcutt and half of Santa Maria, I can only expect that our supervisors probably going to be coming from those areas, and we'll have areas reflecting their concerns will reflect those areas rather than the valley. So, do you have an answer to whether the city has taken that up?
May I address the question? There is an item about county-wide district in for Santa Barbara County on this agenda. Actually, it's the last item of the agenda.
Oh, it's on this agenda?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see it, and then I've spoken at the wrong point in time, Mr. Chair. Okay. It was not widely publicized. Okay.
And Ed Skid.
as a resident of the city of Solvang. And I want to say, this is the first time I've had to come before the new city council, which is a great feeling for me. You've been doing a very good job. But first, the comments I want to make are in regards to talking to the county fire department. And when you come up for your next contract with the county fire department, to see about putting preemption devices in the city of Solvang for our stoplights, to provide the fire department to control fire engine, or the street lights, stoplights, when they come out of town. I've seen a number of occasions where it's by the grace of God that there has been no major accidents in the city of Solvang with people pulling out in front of emergency vehicles. I saw it approximately a week ago on the corner of 5th and Mission Drive, where a fire engine was responding to an incident towards Buellton, and only through the efforts of the driver of the fire engine, who's aware of a lot of people do pull out in front, he did miss broadsiding the car by about 15 to 20 feet. It's an occurrence that I think happens more than people realize, and I understand the city cannot require it, but the county fire department can get involved, and I wish that you would discuss with the county fire department to see about what you can do about putting preemption devices in. So that's my comment on that one. I am going to make a comment in regards to Pastor Brown. I have been helping at the food distribution, and I helped starting in about a year and a half ago, when there were 1,500 people being served, which was about 1,000 to 1,100 families. It has gone down, but in the last several months, we are still serving between 250 and 300 families, which amounts to between 900 and 1,200 individuals. And I will say that Pastor Brown's description of the people who are coming through is very accurate, and it is still a process that's going out there. And in regards to the food that comes in, it is distributed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture Supplies, but sometimes there's some very good food, sometimes there's not so good, and right now they have been informed that for Thanksgiving, last year they gave turkeys away. This year they aren't sure they're going to have turkeys or chickens to give away for Thanksgiving. So it's tough out there, and anything that the city can do to assist the program would be appreciated. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. Related to that request for county fire, they may have to do that of us, but I know that anything that has to do with lights is all Caltrans. We have nothing to do with signaling, or I mean, we can maybe make some suggestions, but just FYI for you out there, we'll see what we can do, maybe contacting with Public Works.
And see how other cities handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can make a request.
Yeah. All right, that was all I had as far as speaker slips. Is there anyone else in the audience would like to say anything or have any comments? Seeing none here, is there any out in Zoom? Again, these are for items that are not on the agenda.
Somebody on the phone seems to want to speak. Callers?
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, thank you for listening to me, Mayor, council members. My name is Hank Homburg. I live in the city of Solvang. And last council meeting, myself, and I'm sure hundreds of others that signed the Save Our Solvang Urban Growth Boundaries, kind of shocked at what took place at council. It sounds like you guys are going to do everything you can to because CJ and the Alisol annexation process within the city. Just a few short years ago, Save Our Solving began as a grassroots local voter organization with the goal of preventing a mayor and council from having the power to annex land into the city. The reason for that is that should a municipality within the state of California increase in size due to annexation, the state will mandate and dictate how the land or other land will be used, as well as infrastructure such as water, wastewater, and even high-density housing most effectively. So Save Our Solvang stepped in and we knocked on doors, hundreds of doors, and received hundreds of signatures to get the urban growth boundary to a vote for the residents of Solvang before any annexation would ever come up. These are your constituents. I'm talking hundreds of them that, you know, we still have names and addresses, I'm sure, of those people. Now, I don't know the legalese of the ordinance that passed, but I do know that bypassing the urban growth boundary, hundreds of residents that support urban growth boundaries are watching what you and this current council is doing with regard to the Alisol. You know, the road that you guys did, the city paid for, the taxpayers paid for with funds, is fantastic now out to the Alisol. But that county road from the Alisol to the Holy Falls is just in a massive state of disrepair. Are we going to take that on if you guys do this annexation as well? No. You know, I mean, I'm all for the Alisol doing what they want to do. If they want to do clamping, if they want to build a convention center, whatever. But go through the county channel, not through fast-paced, fast lane city of Solvang, because the residents don't want some ramifications of that, especially if the state's going to get involved with what's going to happen in the future in our city. So that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate you listening. And again, I was kind of surprised that kind of came out of left field last council member meeting, but there's a lot of people watching right now and listening. And, you know, like I said, I don't know the legalese of the ordinance that passed, but there's a lot of people that are raising eyebrows with regard to this whole issue with Alisol. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Homburg. Appreciate the comments. Is there anyone else out there that would like to have any comment for items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, bringing it back. Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start today's report with a recap of the weekend of the October 29th and the 30th. You see, thanks to staff, great job at the modified location, and all the volunteers and our council volunteers here that you see on the photographs who participated in the haunted house. So we have Mayor Patemarona here helping with the costumes. The monster on the right is somebody that you might recognize or not.
There's a mask.
There's a mask there. And then just a photograph of one of the staging areas that you see there. So it was a really good turnout after the haunted house was shut down last year because of COVID-19. You have some stats here of 890 people that came out through haunted house maze on Friday. And we had a record-setting number on Saturday of 1,483 people on Saturday. So very much welcomed back into the community, great response, great attendance, for a total of almost 2,400 people coming through over the weekend. So once again, thank you all the volunteers and staff for putting this together. It was a great welcome event for the community. Moving forward, we're looking out to our Yule Fest celebration season, which will be kicked off right around Thanksgiving on November 27th, and will go through January 1st of 2022. It will be kicked off as usual, traditional, the tree lighting ceremony on December 3rd, which will be followed by the parade on December 4th, which is the Saturday. So once again, the parade is coming back this year. Unfortunately, last year we had a very modified Yule Fest celebration because we could not have events. So we only had some lights this year, everything is coming back. We'll also have the candlelight tours on every Saturday. The Nice Adventure and the Santa's Village will be available throughout the entire Yule Fest. And of course, we are currently working on all those other things that IDK presented to you before, like the special lights that will be throughout town, all the decorations, as well as the sort of a representation of Christmas market on Copenhagen. Reminding everyone once again that the workshop for alternative choices was moved to January 13th in order to allow for proper public input. We've sent out a couple of e-blasts out to the community, alerting those who signed up through plansolving.com for notifications for this process. We'll also be reaching out into community a lot more proactively for this particular workshop because we want to make sure that we receive all of the community input. So there will be flyers posted throughout the city. We'll work with the businesses to kind of notice the community. We'll also send out another reminder with utility bills next time and continue to send e-blasts. So we're hoping that we'll have lots of participants. The workshop is planned for January 13th at 6 p.m. at the Vets Hall. And there will also be follow-up ability for public to provide comment online, but it's definitely worth coming out and being there in person, as it will be a workshop stations kind of working workshop. So we welcome everybody there. The report will be published sometime between December 15th and 20th to allow the public sufficient time to review it before they come out to the workshop. Just a reminder on commissions and committees, the Planning Commission next meeting will be December 6th. Tourism Advisory Committee, alerting everybody, has changed their regular schedule. They decided to meet, they kept the first Thursday of the month, which will be December 2nd, but they moved their meeting time to 9 a.m. instead of 5 p.m. So that would be a daytime committee that they decided that would be their regular schedule, and they plan on meeting once a month is how they said that. The Design Review Committee will be the next one coming up on November 18th at 5 p.m. Once again, reminding everybody about the drought and the fact that we are asking everybody for a mandatory reduction of 20%. This is set by City Council resolution that you passed. These bills that just went out at the end of October were the ones, the first set of bills that actually assesses these penalties and different restrictions for the drought. So we are beginning to have some questions. If you have questions, of course, contact City Hall at our general number, the office, or by email at cityhall.com. We also, moving on to the advanced calendar, the next meeting on November 22nd is fairly busy again. We will have the first discussion, and the consultant will be here to discuss the utility rate study. It will really be a representation of the process and kind of the big picture of the capital improvement program and whatnot that will fold into this rate study for the first look and the first presentation and your comments. We'll also have the groundwater sustainability plan coming forth to you before the GSA can adopt that. All of the different jurisdictions are looking at those plans. We'll also be coming with parking improvements, which would be a follow-up discussion from a presentation you had received some time ago based on our parking study. Employee handbook update is scheduled to come to you for your review as well, and then we'll be rolling that out to employees. We have a Bocce Bowl project where we'll be coming to you to request waiver of parking and lieu fees. It's a 2-year temporary project planned at the Atterdark Square. So that project has been reviewed by the Design Review Committee and the Planning Commission, and it is within the council discretion to waive any parking fees if you will do so at that point. I see.
I was just looking at the list of items on here, and we just added one a minute ago
Correct.
for the senior center.
Correct.
It's gonna be a long meeting. All right, just making sure.
And then we have the sewer master plan update and construction contract for the Second Street drainage improvements. And of course, whatever items we can put on the consent agenda, we'll present to you in a consent agenda format to expedite the process of the agenda as much as possible. But yes, we're getting busy even though we're moving straight into the holiday season. So the December 13th meeting, we'll be looking at TRC's sign management, which will first be discussed and presented to the TAC. We'll do a marketing update, which would be the last update from IDK under their current contract. So we'll basically be like updating you on the work that they have performed under the current scope of work. Will also be just a reminder and a review of where we are with modified city operations, as the Copenhagen Street currently is scheduled to be reopened as of the end of January. We'll also be coming to you with some city code ordinance amendments for Title 11 that has to do with BCDRC role and then shed setback requirements. We'll be bringing to you IT services contract for approval, which is currently expiring at the end of December. And then we also have the Riverwell addendum and the sewer master plan update. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Wow. Are there any questions of the city manager's report at this time? None? All right. Moving on to council comments, requests for advanced calendar, not next week. Is there any comments? Councilmember Infante.
A couple of comments real quick. Okay, so I was at the SBCAG sub-regional meeting a couple weeks ago, and we are still going through the process of having to vote on COVID-19, allowing for virtual meetings. So it's not back to all in-person meetings again, but you have to pass that as a ruling. The APCD, the Clean Air Express, has had about an 8.5% increase in ridership. There is a new route from Lompoc through Buellton to UCSB, which has been very well accepted. I asked the question if they were going to stop in Solvang, and they said no. At this point in time, they don't have a particular demand or a location. So the answer is no, unless we really wanted to, if there was a need, we could bring it up. We've been talking about the Alamo Pintado Bridge. The upgrade is going to happen. They are saying that the start of construction will happen in mid-2027. So that's not going to happen right away. APCD, the Air Pollution Control District, during all the fires, had created a funding source and came up with a bunch of air purifiers that were handed out over in Guadalupe and Casamolia. They handed out 656, and there was 140 more people lined up waiting to get one. So they were going to try and get some additional funding for some additional air purifiers. That's it. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Are there any other council comments at this time?
Yes.
Pro Tem Morona, go ahead.
So I attended the dinner with the senior center, which was recognizing major donors, and they expressed their interest in coming to the city and seeing how we could help them. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how we can make the new senior center happen. And I just wanted to make a comment on the issue of the urban boundary growth. Thank you so much for everybody that submitted input and made some comments. We are by no means trying to take away anybody's voting rights. We are requesting staff to look into what are the pros and cons of doing annexation versus not annexation, who is gonna maintain the roads, what's the trade-off between annexing and thus being able to get the funding from TOT tax for that operation. What does the urban growth boundary actually state? My understanding is that, at least my understanding right now is that agricultural uses are not subject to the urban growth boundary going up for voting. And again, these are all questions that need to be properly looked at. We are just looking at options and saying what's best for our community and of course the Jackson family, and we are looking to do that properly. It's not something that we can say yes or no just from the first time that it was presented on the agenda, and that's my thoughts on it.
All right, any other?
Yeah, one minor thing. I've been appointed to the Public Safety Committee for Cal Cities. There are two of us, myself and another person from Northern California.
Congratulations on that appointment.
Thank you, I think.
Yeah.
Really, careful your words.
They're actually also looking for some presidential commissions, same exact categories, so.
Like ambassadorships?
No. I don't think so. Any other comments?
I only have one comment. I just,
Councilman.
if anybody is watching, to remind everybody to please come out and support and honor your veterans on Thursday at the Vets Hall. I believe it's at 11 o'clock. So if anybody's listening, please come out and show your support for the veterans.
All right, well, I'll make a few comments and then I'll piggyback on that, what Councilmember Clark just mentioned, and there's also a parade in San Ynez, I believe, on Saturday morning.
I didn't know.
Yeah, so that's, I was asked to be a part of that, so I don't know the time, but I'm assuming it's 11 o'clock. Anyway, it should, that's one item there. I did want to make a comment, again, what Mayor Pro Tem was mentioning about the last council meeting. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things for everyone that's listening, that SOS, the Save Our Solvang, filed a petition on March 9th of 2020 to the council and to the city of Solvang, requesting that UBG be established. It was brought to the council on June 8th of last year, 2020. And at that time, the council had a few options. One was to take it to the voters and let the voters actually vote for it, or make the decision themselves. And at that time, on June 8th, 2020, they voted to make the decision themselves. So that was how the UBG was established. And the reason I make that comment is that there was some erroneous information out there that people voted on it, and that is not absolutely true. There was a petition that was filled out by Save Our Solvang, was submitted to the city with 517 signatures. It was turned over to the County Board of Elections, and 499 of those signatures were verified. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't voters there, but those were that's about 12% of the registered voters at the time. The city council decided again at that meeting on June 8th to not take it to the voters to vote for a UBG. They voted that on themselves, which they had that option to do. So to say it was voted on by the public, it's not exactly correct. I just want to make that clear. So as Mayor Pro Tem Arona stated, we're looking for information on it. It is something that if because of the vote that was taken on June 8th of last year, it would require a vote of the people. And so we're trying to do our due diligence for everyone to understand what it will take to have that actually happen. If it does, there's a lot of moving parts that before anything can even be established going forth with that project. So just wanted to make that clarification. This was not voted on by the people. It was a petition of 499 that submitted from Save Our Solvang, and that's how we now have the urban boundary growth. And it is the same boundary as our current city limits right now. So I just wanted to clarify that part. Going forward, November has been declared National Family Caregivers Month. And so for all of you that are supporting your family and acting as caregivers, there's just a month to honor you, to recognize all of the sacrifices that you as family members make, and or friends to support those as they age, to keep them in their homes. I did want to congratulate the Scarecrow winners for 2021. The most Danish was the Home Connection. The spookiest was Casa Casara Winery. The best use of recycled material was Aerosmith's Wine Bar. Best use of business theme was the Solvang Senior Center. The most humorous was Mechanics Bank. The best photo opportunity was the Swedish Candy Factory, and the best overall was voted the Solvang Senior Center. So kudos to the Senior Center for what they put out there for Halloween. And also just to update you then on the food bank numbers. I had missed a couple of the last time. So on Tuesday, October 12th, there were 772 individuals served, a total of 198 households. October 17, there were 241 households, a total of 946 individuals. For October 26, there were 260 households, 1,102 individuals served. And last week, the numbers were down just a bit from the previous week. For November 2nd, 204 households, 800 individuals, which are still a significant amount of individuals that are being served by our food bank. And I, again, want to just commend all of the volunteers that have put in hours of time in the morning getting everything set up for the service that happens in the afternoon. And lastly, the SB-CAG updates. A reminder that tomorrow at 6 at the Willows Restaurant, there will be a Measure A Citizens Oversight Committee meeting. It will be holding in person. And you can check sbcag.org for the agenda items that will be on there. But that's for Measure A funding they're the ones that SBCAG is the ones that provides all of the funds for all of the infrastructure that's going on, including the broadband that will be happening here, coming up shortly.
After you finish, I have one more.
Oh, okay. SBCAG is also seeking public input countywide on the unmet transit needs. They have a website, again, it's sbcag.org. They're trying to get Santa Barbara County communities to tell us how the bus systems, Dial-A-Ride, and the paratransit systems services are working. So they're hoping to get that input from the public. They'd like to have that available for a virtual listening session on December 1st. Let me check one other thing. The Econ Alliance, again, is conducting a North County Community Broadband Needs Assessment Survey, and that's been extended to complete the survey to November 15 at this time. So anybody that's out there, just know that we're looking to try to get as much public input for how your businesses are. I think it's a 15-page survey or something such as that. And it's kind of geared for the businesses and the public on their uses of the internet and broadband and stuff like that. And so that's how we're going to be able to try to assess what we need to be able to utilize for our North County needs. And I think that's for Our Caltrans District 5, I guess, is just, they've announced intermittent lane closures on the north and southbound Highway 101, Monday through Friday, beginning now up until April 20th of 22, as part of the Alisal fire cleanup. So just FYI for you, if you're on the roads, just watch out, slow for the cone zone, please. And with that, I wanted to let Councilmember Infante know that the North County Sub-Regional for Wednesday has been canceled. So the next one will be December 8th. I think that's all that I had for now. So,
I had
oh,
one more item.
Councilmember Thomas?
I failed to mention, I was recently elected to the St. Annes Valley Airport Authority Board, and I'm assuming there's no conflict there, Mr. City Attorney? Yeah, the St. Annes Valley Airport Authority, we oversee the airport in St. Annes.
They're not geographically contiguous. I don't see there being a conflict in those two roles.
I didn't think so, but I wanted to ask, thank you.
And I did want to thank again the Parks and Recreation Department for a great haunted house weekend last weekend. And I know that second night, Saturday night, that's the largest crowd that they've ever had go through a haunted house. And I took my granddaughter there. It was really fun on that night, so. Yes, and again, for all of the volunteers that helped with that, Fred is the brainchild of all of that, but there's so many people from the community that come out to help before setting it up, being a part of it, to be able to entertain our community and provide that venue to our community in the valley, families and everything, and then all the people that helped to tear it down after it's over, because you know, Sunday morning comes and now you have to tear it all down. So had a little time with Fred that Sunday afternoon, so I know I saw Councilmember Thomas over there in the morning, so that was good to see it. Anyway, thank you again for Parks and Rec for putting on a great haunted house. And with that, we'll move to consent agenda items. Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
The consent agenda is designed for routine administrative city matters and is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak on consent agenda items during the public communications portion of this agenda. Our consent agenda includes approval of agenda as presented, approved minutes of the regular meeting of October 25th, 2021. Accept as complete the South Alisal Road Pavement Reconstruction Project, PW number 141 with Cal Portland Company, and authorize the city manager to file the notice of completion. Adopt resolution number 21-1150, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, authorizing remote teleconferencing meetings of the City Council. Receive and file San Ynez Valley Hotel Association's first quarter 2021 report, and approve the cancellation of the December 27, 2021 City Council meeting.
Mayor, if I may request on item 4A, agenda as presented.
Yes.
I have requested the consultant with sales tax to give you a brief presentation, which is item number 8, if that could be moved up to become number 6 instead, after the broadband.
Okay. 8 will go to 6.
Is there a motion to approve that?
Are there any questions or any items that council members would like to pull? I just have one quick question on the adopted resolution 4D. Is that's something that we're going to have to continue to keep bringing as long as the emergency is in place, correct?
On a monthly
So
basis.
we'll be seeing this again. Is it every 30 days that's going to be coming up? Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Yeah, for the authorizing remote teleconference. Okay, all right. And if there's no council members that wish to pull any items, I will entertain a motion to approve the council agenda.
I'll second.
with the amendment as stated by our city manager.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call. I think it was Councilmember Clark.
You just said, is
I
there?
know, I said I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll wake up.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Aruna,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving to public hearings, we have none today, so we'll move right on to the regular business agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title for agenda item number 5?
Broadband Strategic Plan. Receive and file a presentation on the regional broadband strategic plan for Santa Barbara County. Approve the MOU with Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, County of Santa Barbara, and the cities of Buellton, Carpinteria, Goleta, Guadalupe, Lompoc, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and Solvang for preparation of a regional broadband strategic plan, Broadband Alliance of Santa Barbara County Alliance. Financially contribute $3,581.30 towards this effort from the general fund for the term January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, and authorize the mayor to execute on behalf of the city.
Thank you. I will kick off this item, and then we have a couple of speakers with us here today. We have Margie with SBCAG who's here in person, and we also have Bill Simmons with the Broadband Consortium who's joining us by Zoom. So the broadband concept has been worked on here in the Valley actually for a while now with the Econ Alliance as kind of the leadership for our region. We've been working, or this organization has been working with the Chumash as well in order to bring the broadband to this region. And the whole concept is to have a connecting broadband internet connectivity and infrastructure in this region. Now we are looking at, or where this effort is moving, is going to be countywide, which is why now we have SBCAG heavily involved in this. And there's a lot of support from the state for this. There's expected to be quite a bit of funding coming for this effort as well from the state resources. And essentially what we are looking at is at government becoming involved in providing that infrastructure. So with that, I'll invite Margie with SBCAG to come up and make the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Bradford. I appreciate the invitation to be before you today. I just was, and thank you, Mayor and honorable council members. I just had the privilege of giving a similar presentation to the city of Carpinteria in your parking lot using the broadband technology that we're all talking about. And by the way, the mayor says hi. I think he's a former student, co-student of yours. Yeah, school member, yeah.
Yes.
So that was an interesting connection there too. So anyway, I'm Margie Kern. I'm the Executive Director of Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. As you all know, referred to as SBCAG. Make it a little easier. We are the Council of Governments under Joint Powers Agreement for between Santa Barbara County and each of the city governments. So we either have a mayor or council member from each of the 8 cities in Santa Barbara, plus the 5 board of supervisors who act as our board. We're primarily responsible for distributing local, state, and federal transportation funds and identifying those priorities and getting those projects done. But we also act as a forum for regional and multi-jurisdictional public policy issues. So this is a forum where we can discuss these things that cross jurisdictional boundaries that we can all get a benefit from. Over the past few months, funding opportunities have been announced from both the state and federal governments to provide better access to those who depend on broadband for services, going to work, school, or shopping, or what have you. $65 billion from the federal government was approved by Congress last week, and hopefully it's going to be signed by the president any day now, if it hasn't already. So, and then in addition to that, the state has also identified $6 billion for the state of California. So the idea is that these funding, we're assuming that these funding sources will be combined together and filtered through the state to the jurisdictions to implement broadband improvements to our jurisdictions that need it the most. So with this funding opportunity forthcoming, the SB-CAG board expressed a desire to make sure that we do something to make sure we're prepared to implement those improvements that we need at a regional level to have better broadband access to stakeholders in an effective and efficient manner. So in July, this past July, the SB-CAG formed an ad hoc committee of 5 of our board members, 2 from the county and 3 from the local cities. And the ad hoc committee basically recommend to the board of directors at their last meeting to encourage the formalizing a collaborative regional approach to this broadband strategic plan that we're discussing tonight. The SB-CAG board directed me to come out into each of the cities to ask for your participation in that planning process, as well as your financial contribution to help get it done. So I'm also here with Dr. Bill Simmons of the Broadband Consortium of the Pacific Coast. They've been working on this for a few years now, and he'll go over the strategic planning process of how this will move forward and what the concept that we're trying to implement here, and then I'll close it up at the end when he's done with his presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill for his, and I assume he's on TV?
He's.
Okay. There he is.
Ready or not?
Yeah.
Thank goodness for broadband. I assume you have some slides available that I can talk to as well. There is a presentation that we provided you, has 19 slides. I won't talk all 19. What I'd like to do is just kind of do a flyover, give you talking points of perhaps my favorite 5 or 6 slides that kind of encapsulate why we're here. My job tonight is to provide technical support to Margie and SB-CAG in terms of where we've been, what we're doing, and what we hope.
Can you share a screen? Bill, can you share your screen with that presentation?
I can. Let me go grab that real quick if you don't mind. We'll get back here. How does that look? Does that work?
Good. All good.
Okay, so let's go through this very quickly. I'm going to skip ahead to this slide. And talk about the Broadband Consortium for the Pacific Coast. We've been around since 2014. It's 7 years now. And we're funded by the California Public Utilities Commission. And we have partnerships. We're out, the First Economic Development Corporation in Ventura County is the administrator, but we rely on the Econ Alliance in Santa Barbara County, and then REACH up in San Luis Obispo County as partners to be able to talk about all things broadband. Up until a couple of years ago, CPUC was very interested in the consortium conducting engagements with municipalities, counties, not-for-profits, everybody and anybody that might be interested in accessing CPUC funding. In particular, with rural communities, any place where there was underserved, unserved, we would work with the telecoms and apply for infrastructure grants. If there were public housing projects, we would work with those particular developers or property management firms for grants for public housing, broadband internet access. And then there were digital literacy programs and after-school programs and all kinds of learning for the digital equity aspect of broadband. Then COVID happened and everything changed. Instead of working on the far end fringes of the rural communities, we realized through adversity that we were upside down. Where we focused on business parks and economic development is what broadband is. We never really understood, when I say we, it's broad in general, you know, in terms of conventional wisdom. We didn't worry about residential areas at all, and just didn't feel like it was necessary. In fact, trying to get folks to telework prior to COVID just wasn't possible. But COVID changed everything, and our role as a consortium changed dramatically, and everything that we thought we knew, we found out very quickly that we didn't. That when it comes to working families and kids going to school, all sharing a broadband connection in their home, the capacity is limited. It's unlimited. It really is limited. It could choke off fairly quickly. And we just learned that there's an awful lot of communities and portions of the communities that don't have the access we need. So I'm not going to go through the story of Santa Barbara County on this. I will stop here real quickly and say, as a consortia, we focus on convening stakeholders. That's public, that's private, the telecoms, that's social equity partners and not-for-profits. It's everybody that has any connection, and we all connect, if you will. Is part of the conversation. And so we start that conversation going, and then we focus on middle mile infrastructure. We invite all into the room. We talk about how we can leverage each other's resources. We talk about not just one funding source, but where we can bring all funding sources together for that greater good of community development in terms of capacity. And then we talk about going neighborhood to neighborhood, looking at what the current state is, what the future state should be, how do we close that gap and get the funds required to do just that. The state and the federal government is looking at broadband as being infrastructure. It is the fourth utility. And our partnership with SBCAG is wonderful in that it's just like virtual highways, virtual roads, if you will. It's going to be as prevalent eventually to how data flows is how transportation flows, and it'll be the superhighway for sure, in how it interconnects. Certain terms I'll be talking about perhaps is middle mile, last mile, and then the digital inclusion aspect of this. So also when you're talking about terms, I've been in presentations early on where if you don't go over and explain that broadband is a big elephant, it's everything. It's mobile, it's fixed, it's satellite, cable, fiber, DSL, Wi-Fi, 5G. It's broadband as a word means simply high-speed internet. As a consortium, though, we tend to focus on fiber because no matter what technology you use, you're going to need fiber to get there. Even wireless needs fiber. Anytime you see a cell tower radiating wireless signals, it's got fiber there at the tower because that's how you get back to the internet, is through the fiber. And so the fiber infrastructure within communities is very essential. Some kind of, if you don't have a plan to go to the house, you ought to have a plan to have a grid of some sort in which you have capacity for the wireless connections for the last mile. And so having that conversation as a municipality is very important. Talking about interconnecting anchors to a municipality is very important. Having different points of access to a municipality is very important. As I said, I'm not going to talk about report cards. There is a Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago did have an article about Santa Ynez. And anytime you talk about internet in Santa Ynez Valley in the Wall Street Journal, it wasn't necessarily a good article, but we all know that. And also there's a digital inclusion list. I'm going to skip forward a couple pages, if you will. Current funding opportunities. Margie talked about last week, the internet funds that came out of the infrastructure grant. I need to add that to this chart. These are the funding sources that currently exist prior to the new funds that have been assigned. And one of the things that they all require is that our communities are what they call shovel ready. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about that as it relates to a strategy, but there are all kinds of funds to access for this. We understand communities have limited budgets and limited resources. They haven't necessarily saved or don't have the capacity to save for this. This is all money that we have to plan for, draw to it, prepare the applications and access. And that's what the point of the strategy is. It's not our plan, it's your plan. It's going to be the plan for the community to provide exactly what the community needs based on the conversations that are going to occur. Moving forward, I'm going to pause here for a moment, and then I'll get to the last slide of the presentation. We talked about the TrueMatch early on in this presentation. You have a resident that lives in the valley there that came up with the concept on the far right, the North County Fiber Ring, we call it. We've been working on this for several years. And it's the interconnection of the communities in the valley. The Chumash, about a year ago, had a broadband strategy. I'm on the left of the chart now, and they looked at what they needed at the reservation. They looked at the opportunity to partner in the development of the fiber ring. They were successful in getting wireless spectrum, so they're gonna, within a few short years, be broadcasting wireless 5G kinds of signals within the valley there, with their own licensed spectrum in the area. And with these assets, if you will, they took initial planning of $50,000, developed a strategy, and from that strategy, they've now been awarded close to $100,000 from the state of California for a technical assistance grant. The EDA, there's another $500,000 that's been applied for that should be coming their direction in coming weeks and months for the design and engineering of this North County fiber ring. They've also now applied to NTIA funding to go from the reservation down to Goleta as the first leg of this North County ring, if you will. And they continue to want to be applying for additional funding to help build interconnections to all the Chumash sites there in the valley. So this is from $50,000 has spawned for the North County ring in the last 12 months, about $6.5 million of asks, if you will, proposals and applications for funding. From this, though, the compelling opportunity is regionalize the conversation. It's important that it not just be the Chumash and the Chumash alone, but it be all of the municipalities participating in the north, as well as the county overall from a much broader standpoint. And so give a lot of credit to the tribe and what they've been able to do, the leadership they've shown, the work that they've done, and the success that they've seen in being able to get this thing started. The snowball is just beginning to roll down the hill, and we want to continue to build that momentum. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and just say, talking about the neighborhoods and an equitable integrated response to the convenings and bringing all the players together, talking about middle mile where we can bring, look at which connections can we bring into the community so we have redundancy. I've talked in the past about the fact that when we have fire seasons, here in the south especially, we've had certain neighborhoods that have only one fiber connection serving a neighborhood. The fire takes it out and it'll take a week before you can get broadband established back for that community. Is not acceptable in the midst of a disaster. We want to provide this basic foundation for the kinds of things we've lived through for the last couple of years. We need to be able to have every home have distance learning, telemedicine, social services, education, public safety. All of this is, those connections need to be available and reliable across the community overall. And then finally, why the consortium? Well, as I mentioned, we've been convening and having these conversations over the last 7 years. So we've already built that relationship and those linkages with the parties and the partners involved. We're not viewing ourselves as consultants at all. What we're viewing ourselves as is conveners and facilitators. The outcomes and the deliverables are yours. They are going to be your applications, your shovel-ready projects, your needs identified in communities of where we go to work first and what your priorities are. And then we just are thrilled that you had the opportunity to speak for you tonight and tell you what this is all about. Margie, I'm happy to take any other questions and turn this back to you at this point.
Sure. Let me just conclude with what we're asking for tonight. Again, the board of directors of the SBCAG have directed me to reach out to each of the county and to each of the cities. The county's already dedicated $200,000, half of the cost of this effort, which we estimate at about $400,000. So we asked that we divvied up the remaining need of $200,000 amongst the cities, and there was some debate going back and forth on how to best divvy that up, and there were several suggestions, but we ended up with population because it is a planning process, and that seemed the most equitable way of doing that. So the city of Solvang's share of that population is $3,581. And so what we're asking for is your contribution to the effort and your participation. So we would ask that staff be actively engaged, and I will be making sure that that happens throughout my communications and my outreach. in association with the Broadband Consortium with Bill at my side. So with that, we'll hand it back over to the City Manager Bradford and any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Do we have questions of the report? Councilmember Infante.
Bill, I believe I attended one of the Econ Alliance meetings that you were there. And I heard Sam Cohen talk about how they connected the casino to the Hotel Cork to other properties, things like that. They buried fiber in the ground along some area. I don't recall, pardon me. The shovel ready bothers me. Okay, so what at $3,500, I think it's a great idea. I'd love to support it. Shovel ready bothers me because now I'm asking the question: do we have to provide city right of way to put fiber into this area?
So Bill, do you want to answer that? Again, the strategic plan is going to be identifying where the needs are, and then it'll be up to a choice of the cities of where you want to implement those improvements if you so desired. So it may be, or it may be state highway right away, or it may be other public right of ways that we have available to us, such as county roads or rail right of ways or what have you. Yeah. So we don't know the answer to that question yet, and I think Bill is online as well. He could probably answer that as well. So go ahead.
The ask is to engage, is to participate in the conversation. If there are issues with that, let those issues surface as part of the dialogue. I don't know where you're going to need to go, or what you're going to prioritize, or what the requirements or needs are. We're asking to have a conversation to find out. And if there's reasons that prohibit you from providing access on right-of-ways, or ideally we find other providers, telecoms, that may already have the fiber, and there's a number of different players and partners that may already be able to do that. It's really interesting. We've done a middle mile network down here in Ventura County where the actual big dig and right-of-ways for the miles and miles and miles we're talking about the interconnected communities, we're looking at about 5 to 7%. The rest of the fiber is already pretty much there in one partner or another. You just need to have the conversation and be at the table having the dialogue. And then you figure out what you can and can't do once you engage and have the discussion.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions of the report? I just one question, just kind of bringing it forward. I know we're talking about the middle mile, and that's all that Caltrans easements and stuff. And I know they were discussing about going through the middle of a number of, like, State Highway 101. 246 is part of this ring that we're talking about, so I'm assuming that they've already given their okay for some of this to happen on their easement of 246.
We haven't gotten any okays yet. So again, we don't know where those needs are. And again, that conversation of having those stakeholders at the table is why we need the strategic plan to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is a new technology. I had a conversation with Granite Construction the other day because, they're interested too, because a lot of their jobs, they're out there and doing pavement. It's called micro trenching. I'm sure your public works knows all about it, and it's basically all in one, where they come, they dig, they lay, they repave, and they're just digging this much or whatever. It's pretty swift of the technology that's available to make these things happen. So
It's only the right of way that's the concern.
yeah, it's the right of way, putting it in there. Yeah, you have to have the right of way for sure, and the permits to go there. But the actual work itself is not that intrusive. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other questions of the report? Seeing none, we'll take it out to public comment. Thank you, Margie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you
And
for-
Bill, appreciate, Dr. Bill, excuse me.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience? I don't have any speaker slips on this topic. Seeing none, move it out to the Zoom. Is there anyone out in Zoom that would like to make a comment? I don't see any. We'll bring it back Public comment is closed, and just for final discussion and action. Does anybody have any final comments?
I would like to see it go forward. I think the $3,500 is a minimal investment for what it does for the area, and I think we can do that. And I'd like to support this all the way. I have the questions, of course, but like we were told, it's a process. But I think I would like to move that we approve that.
Do we have a second or any further discussion on that, or we'll take that as a motion?
I'll second that motion.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark,
For further discussion, yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick,
Yes.
passes 5-0.
All right. Moving on to item number 6, which is now the fiscal year 2021.
Item number 6 is what used to be item number 8.
So, Madam Clerk, would you please read the item?
Fiscal year 21-22, quarter 1 financial report. Receive the fiscal year 21-22, quarter 1 financial report.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you. I will introduce a brief staff report, but as I have mentioned, I have also invited our sales tax consultant with Muni Services, or they're also known as Avenue Analytic Insights, who work with us to look at our sales tax as an economic indicator and provide us with overall economic conditions reports. And on the background, they also work with us to make sure that they work with the state and are authorized to work on our behalf. They basically monitor, make sure that all the sales tax payments are being submitted on behalf of the city. So they're very well familiar with our data. They also work with many other jurisdictions. There's basically 2 companies like this that work with municipalities. So they also have a comparative data as to how we're doing in our sales tax and what we're seeing versus what we're seeing regionally and throughout California. So I'll kick it off really briefly. This is one of the charts that comes from their report. This shows the change in sales tax on a quarterly and annual basis for quarter 2 of year 2021 compared to the year 2020, which was the COVID-19 year, of course. So we're capturing that quarter 1, which falls into April, May, June timeframe. So you will see the interesting trends here because the quarter of 2020 during those 3 months was exactly when we had the shutdown. So what you see here in the cash receipts in the graph there, or in the chart, you will see that the City of Solomon change was 67.5% on quarterly basis in terms of increase in receipts, and on annual basis it was 19.2%. The comparative, looking at Solvang, for example, as compared to Santa Barbara County-wide, the county-wide increase for the same quarter from 2020 compared to Solvang was 33%. So you're looking at Solomon basically increased its receipts double, which also means probably that Solomon had a greater loss during that time, and we are now coming back to more normal. This here shows the annual receipts of sales tax per capita. And what you see here is a comparison for that second quarter throughout the year. So the data goes from 2017 through 2021. And you will see that our current sales tax per capita is $250, which I actually had asked the consultant what the statewide average was, and she said it was only about 130. So we are doing rather well in our sales tax per capita. This graph here shows a forecast, and Mary De La Rosa, who is online with us, will go through this in a little bit more detail. But what you see here is that our 21-22 budget was set at $1.4 million, and currently we are forecasting $1.7 million. So based on the receipts of the second quarter of 2021, which actually falls into the last fiscal year, the trends that we now know, because sales tax is lagged by 2 months, we are learning that we are doing pretty well. I would say though that in caution to that there is also a fairly significant inflation, so we will see some pressures on our expenditures as well. So my recommendation is not to get overly excited about this increase at this point, and wait until we get to the mid-year and really look at our expenditures and our revenues, and at that point we'll recommend to you any budget adjustments as needed. This chart here shows our sales tax collections. You will see that on the left we have only 2 months showing here for sales tax, which are July and August for this year. But you will see that August in the blue far exceeds the receipts of any August performance from the prior 3 years. We see the same trend in TOT. Just a reminder that even though the sales tax that we will be focusing on quite a bit today in terms of how we are doing economically, and that's a great indicator, and we can also compare that to other jurisdictions statewide and to the county. But for us, TOT it comprises 50% of all of our discretionary revenues. So once again, you will see that very strong TOT receipts as we get into July and August, and I would expect that those trends will continue as we move further into this fiscal year. The bright red bars show the receipts in TOT for July and August, and once again you can see that that's quite a bit higher than the levels that we had even in pre-COVID-19 time, which is your orange bar there, was the 2019 year. Okay, and with that I hope that Mary is online with us.
I am. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can look at the presentation that I have prepared for you today. See if I can't. Trying to. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me this evening. So I'm going to talk about sales tax, and right now how the recovery is going. We're back. You know, as Anna was saying, we were, you know, we've seen some really big increases, and we've seen these for most cities in the state right now. This first page is just looking at the California taxable sales in billions on a cash basis, going back to 2015, what the actuals were, showing what 2021 is the highest it's ever been. There were some declines in 2018 due to some issues with the CDTFA. So we could see, you know, 2020 of course was down 6.9%, and then we're up 12.6%, so over 800 billion. The 5 years of historical annual growth has been about 4.2%. So we're tracking along with that. What about more recent California taxable sales? Right now, this is just looking at some statewide month-over-month changes. We are expecting the September numbers to come in strong. Right now, as on the previous slides, we were seeing that, you know, we only have the data through June, but we have received monthly payments for July and August, and those have both come in significantly higher than anticipated. We will know in a few weeks what that September number is. Excuse me, I do have a bit of a cough here. What economic segments led the way in the recovery? And so what we're looking at are some aggregated data for just certain cities, just so we can give you an idea kind of what's going on statewide and in different regions of the state. So which economic segments sustained COVID losses. And of course, restaurants was huge, and of course, that was the same for the city of Solvang. You know, so many restaurants were closed, and unless you had a lot of fast food restaurants in your city, you really saw some really good ones. Service stations was another one during 2020 that were down. The price of gas was lower then, as well as consumption. Apparel stores, most of those had been closed down. New auto sales were down, furniture and appliance, and others. And then what we're looking at on segments that experience gains, well, the countywide pool, which we'll talk a little bit more about, pools in general, and that's mainly due to e-commerce, which was very strong during 2020. Drugstores were up, and a lot of that was due to cities that have cannabis dispensaries, that they are classified as drugstores. IT infrastructure, miscellaneous retail, liquor sales were up, and then biotechnology. And then which economic segment sustained the biggest recovery gains? You see on the left the gains, the county pool continuing to go up, miscellaneous retail, new auto sales. We've seen very strong numbers coming out of the pandemic. Used autos as well, you know, with supply and demand, there's been much higher prices on used cars as well, which has contributed. Drugstores, heavy industry, light industry. And then the 13 segments experiencing declines. Still, restaurants haven't made a complete comeback yet because we've only had maybe 2 quarters of those gains, and so annually we're still seeing some declines there. Service stations, health and government, IT infrastructure, energy sales, and so forth. And then which economic segments led the way in the recovery of the sales tax revenues in the pools? Declines in health and government, office equipment, light industry, and restaurants. But the ones that had the big gains in the pools were like miscellaneous retail, apparel. A lot of your the businesses that were closed, but their e-commerce was high. So in like apparel, you know, people were obviously still buying apparel, but they couldn't go into the stores. Recreation products were high. People were, you know, bicycles were a really hot item during the pandemic. Furniture and appliance coming out where people were shopping more. You know, the BestBuys.com and Apple online and things like that were some of the things that we did see in the pools. And then countywide pool for by segment gains coming out, and this is the second quarter of 2021, the most current data available. Miscellaneous retail, department stores, health and government, and so forth. And then some areas that we're still seeing declines would be leasing, service stations, food markets, and food processing. So looking at a statewide recovery summary, talking about taxable sales in California, fully recovered to the level they had been at COVID. And so the growth has been strong. For the year ending 2019 to the year ending 2020, the biggest declines were in restaurants, service stations, and apparel. During those same periods, the pools dominated by e-commerce, drugstores dominated by marijuana dispensaries, IT infrastructure, miscellaneous retail had substantial gains. In the group of the large cities examined, restaurants, service stations, and health and government had been further losses. But the bright spots were e-commerce, auto sales, drugstores, heavy and light industry, apparel, and building materials. So how is Solvang doing? So more importantly here. So first is looking at the breakdown of your rate. So you know, when you purchase any kind of tangible personal property, as the CDTFA would call it, which is the California Department of Fee and Tax Administration, you pay a total rate of 7.75%. And this is just showing the breakdown. Most of this does go to the state, but the city gets 1%. And then in the county, there's also a countywide tax of 0.5% for the local transportation authority. And We did look on the previous charts of the sales tax performance, and that was cash-wise. So this is kind of looking at the economic picture. So included in your cash that you receive each quarter, there's always some late pays and adjustments. And so we take those out and just looked at how did the business perform comparing the second quarter of 2020 to 2021. Got a 99.2% increase for the city of Solvang. And that's for quarter over quarter and 14.1 for the year. You could see the South Coast region, the state, everyone had huge increases this quarter. Excuse me. And then you can see your 5 major categories. Your largest is your food and general retail. Those are your 2 largest, both with 135%, 167% increases. Transportation, of course, construction and business to business. And then below that, we list your major segments. So restaurants is your largest, had a over 283% increase. Building material retail has remained strong. Miscellaneous retail, which will be a lot of your specialty stores, food markets, service stations, food processing, drugstores, apparel, and so forth. You did have a couple of declines in there, building material wholesale, and then heavy industry. And this chart is one that we include in our quarterly packets, and this kind of gives you that picture of, I'm sorry, can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just a picture of how your sales tax in the different 5 categories have performed since 2016. So this just shows that dramatic change in 2020. And you can see the sharp decline for both food and for general retail. A little bit in the transportation as well, but it's a much smaller category for you. Construction, didn't seem to really miss a beat there, and business to business was down a little bit, but it is back up again too. And again here we're looking at your food with that huge increase for the quarter. And food is 45% of your sales tax. That would include your food markets, liquor stores, restaurants, and food processing. And then the retail is looking at your apparel, and you had department stores, drug stores, recreation, miscellaneous retail, and so forth. This is a chart of the South Coast region for that same period of time. So again, we did see, the sharp declines, certainly not as deep because we're looking at a much broader area here, but you can see here where, retail is the number 1, and then transportation at number 2 here. But the big drops with food as well, with restaurants being closed. And then this is looking at the annualized breakdown of the growth. So on the left, we have the city of Solvang. It's looking from 2012 to 2021. And then on the right is the South Coast region and just where the growth has occurred. And of course, most of yours has been in food and construction. And then when we look at the South Coast region, it's general retail, transportation, and then food. We were early looking at a per capita that included the county pools. This one does not include the county pool, just looking at the 6 categories that you do have, and it goes all the way back to 2012. But again, just showing, that big change, really showing that big drop and then coming right back out of that and surpassing that. So these numbers are a little different again because they don't include the pool amounts. This chart's looking at your annualized sales tax going back to 2003. The red line is the annualized sales tax, and then the yellow line is adjusted for inflation. Again, this is the forecast, so I won't spend too much time on that since we looked at that one already. But we did see, we're anticipating a 21% increase this fiscal year, a 1.7. You did have a 1.6 down the prior year, but you know, when we do the forecast also, we do a micro view of your sales tax, and that's what we do for all of our client cities, where we're looking at the businesses in your city, not just looking at how are restaurants doing or new cars doing or, you know, in general. And we certainly take those things into account, but we're looking at the specific businesses in the city of Solvang. And this is just a breakdown of how by category of how they performed, and then what we're anticipating for the growth into the next years. Excuse me. And then this chart is looking at your sales tax going all the way back to 2006. These are quarterly amounts that we're looking at. This is showing the 2008 recession. But more importantly, what we're looking at today is, this is when the pandemic began. And we did see a few quarters of declines. We did see, you know, the second quarter up. And this is kind of where we are now, that it did take about 1.5 years to return to the previous levels. And then we are forecasting, of course, growth beyond that. This is looking at the pool, and there's been a lot of discussion of the pool and what's going on with Amazon, and I'm sure some of you have heard about some of those issues, but the pool activity has certainly been growing over the years, and you know, the e-commerce has just been, you know, a bigger part of our sales tax, and every city receives a portion of that. So what goes into the pools, excuse me, would be online retail sales. Amazon is a big part of that, of course, but other online retailers, and also use tax. So for businesses that are selling into the county from out of state, that's under a certain amount, it goes into the pool. So every city in the county receives a portion of that, and it's a pro rata share of the total sales tax for that particular quarter. So you can see that your share is about 2.1%. And just kind of walking through this one a little bit, these top amounts are quarter over quarter changes. So we did see the pool go up 17.9% this quarter. Excuse me, and the pool's, you know, at the highest it's ever been. And then your share, which you get 2.1%, was up 48% this quarter. So different things that have happened over the last few years. The AB 147, which was the Wayfair decision. This is when out-of-state retailers had to start collecting and remitting sales and use tax. And so those were going into the pools. And so we did get, for example, people using the Amazon platform for selling that, you know, items that aren't being fulfilled through their warehouses. So that was a big permit that came on. eBay had to start reporting, Etsy and others. Then we kind of look at the stabilization, still some really good growth, but not, you know, as big a growth as we'd seen, you know, the year before. And then the impact of the Amazon reallocation. So Amazon is now not reporting all their dollars to the pool. Over the last few quarters now, they are also reporting to the cities that have a warehouse distribution center, fulfillment center. So dollars have been coming out of the pool because of that. But still, even with that, we're seeing some good increases for the quarter. So kind of the summary for Solvang is that we've seen substantial growth and outperforming the South Coast region. The restaurants, service stations, apparel, and many other segments had huge increases in the taxable sale of the second quarter of 2021. Of course, it's an indication of a surge in tourism, a key driver of your sales tax growth. Robust growth in the sales tax revenues is forecasted, especially in the next 2 to 3 years. And our analysts did put this in here: the city should not be overly concerned about the impact of inflation. And the reason for that is it doesn't correlate well with rates of change in sales tax. And then relative price changes, such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, do impact sales tax revenues, you know, as we're all paying more at the gas pump, unfortunately for consumers, but great for cities that have service stations. So we're watching those closely. We do factor those into the forecasts. And that the impact of the large amount of sales tax being reallocated out of the Santa Barbara County pool was more than offset by robust e-commerce growth and local economic recovery. And I know I was speaking fast, and I apologize for that because I have this cough and I didn't want to cough too much on everybody here. So please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, are there any questions of the staff report?
I've never heard anybody say good news and high price and taxes in the same sentence in my entire life.
She did an admirable job, didn't she?
Sheesh.
Hardware went down. Or building materials went up though, so that was good.
Don't know I've been so busy.
So we don't have any other questions up here, just take it out for public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none in-house, is there any in Zoom? Seeing none in Zoom, or on the phone, bring it back. I don't think there's a motion that needs, it's just for information only at this time.
Just to be safe and file.
Just one comment, but I was looking at this over the weekend. Did you guys look at this page?
Yep.
And because the Alisol was on top, I'm thinking, okay, this is ranked. I'm like, Chomp is number 3? That's a lot of onion rings. But I see that it's in alphabetical order.
Yes.
I did the same thing. I think it's the Brontosaurus burgers.
Individual business information is protected, so we just go by alphabetical rank.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. Appreciate the work you've done on that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Assisting staff. And moving on to item number 7. Madam Clerk, which was formerly number 6. Formerly known as Prince. Sorry.
Electric Bike Share Program for Solvang. Receive a presentation and discuss potential for development of an electric bike share program for Solvang.
Then there's a staff report.
So this item was placed on the agenda at the request of Councilmember Infante, and the staff report, council report is prepared by Councilmember Infante.
If you'll do this slide,
I can do this
thank
one.
you very much. Okay, so briefly, I went to an electric bike program that was held out at the Cork where you could try electric bikes and things like that. And I started talking to them because they had a couple of these electric bikes out there that were part of the bike share program that Santa Barbara's running. So I started looking into that to see if it was reasonable for the city. So my objective is to just bring this up as a subject. I'm not sure that I'm convinced it's good for us yet, but I wanted to present it. So on the next slide, what I want to do is talk a little bit about what would it do for us. Would it help us with the parking? Say if we put outlying parking lots for employees so they could grab one of these electric bikes, ride into town, go to work, take one and go back to their car later on in the day. A fun activity for tourists. Provide a way for business employees to park away from tourist areas. That's what I was talking about initially. And advertising for local businesses. Now this is a touchy subject, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But on the next slide, if you look at the economics of this, I've looked at and talked to a lot of people about this. And there's a lot of comments that say it's good for the economics, it's good for your health, it's good for the environment. If you're not driving a car, you're not putting stuff in the air, it's good for your health because you're pedaling. Yeah, okay. It says nearly 80% of the users are more likely to visit a business when it's located near a B-Cycle station. Now I'm bringing up a contractor here with B-Cycle. And I bring up B-Cycle because they're the ones that's in Santa Barbara. And the idea was, gee, if there was a commonality between the two. There would be some cost savings, there would be some advantages to it. So I've stuck pretty much with B-Cycle. I haven't looked at any other vendors. Not the way we would have to do things. But if we look at the next slide, what you'll see is this is what Santa Barbara is. There's the electric bikes, and there's the hoops, those black hoops that the bike fit into. That's a charging station, and it locks it. The other thing that you do is you put a QR code on the side of it, and you go up, scan it, and boom, you got an app on your phone. You can charge it, get on the bike, it releases, ride it off. Costs you $7 a half an hour. Okay? Now, there are annual things. I've got my notes here. An annual, it's in here someplace. I don't know, around $115 or something for a year, and then you could ride it as often as you wanted to, or something like that. And there was one for low income people. So if you qualify at one of these low incomes, it's like $25 a year. This is something that like I said, they're doing in Santa Barbara. When they're complete, they're going to have 250 bikes and 500 docking hoops. Right now, they got about 140 of them and 283 docks. You have to have twice as many docks as you have bikes, so you don't run out of places to put the bike when you get to the other end of your trip. Okay, they launched this in January of this year. And they've already got this, look at this, 11,000 riders for 227,000 miles, 56,000 trips year to date. And then they give you calories burned and estimated carbon offset. Okay, fine. I'm not into the health part of this necessarily, it's a good idea, but that's not what brought me to this. So on the next slide, what I've got is a couple of points about this. So if you take a look at this picture on the left, this is what the handlebars look like on the bike, and you notice there is a cell phone on a rubber band sitting there. So again, if you went to one of the QR codes that the city council, I'm not the city council, sorry, the Chamber of Commerce puts out, you can scan that, you'd have a map of all the restaurants in the city, and you can figure out where you want to go. You could put the basket on the front of that bike. You could put ads on the inside of it, so that it wouldn't be obnoxious to those on the outside of the bike, but the person riding it, looking down at the basket, would get ads. So we could sell some of that and get some revenue for this. There's also revenue on the next page. You'll see that we've got the thought of putting the actual ad on your cell phone. So you log into it and you get an ad on there that says, hey, go to Rasmussen's, or go to there, or go to there. Those kinds of things are possibilities for advertising. So there's ways of looking at the cost of this. And if we continue on the next page, what we've got is there's some sponsorship things. You know, you might come up with 5 bikes or 10 bikes, or how many do you want to do? There's a couple of ways of getting funding. Now, on the next page, I came up with a couple of things that we need to consider. So I talked to the B-Cycle people, and they said, okay, you probably, for your size city, need about 20 bikes and 40 docks. And it cost you $114,000 to set it up. And then it's going to cost you about $48,000 a year to maintain it. So we'd need some sponsorship maybe. But I mean, if you put a couple down at Al Sol so they could ride up into town easily, or those kind of things, and maybe Al Sol would like to help support that. I don't know. The B-Cycle program, okay, so some other considerations for the city. Additional bike lanes, we'd probably need some of those. Is it competition for the trolley and the pedicab? Or how about the other bicycle shops? Okay, so one of the other things we'd have to do along with the maintenance is sign a contract with some bicycle shop. If you get a flat tire and you're away from the hoop, what do? There has to be a number, and it has to go to one of these shops who's going to go out and fix their tire for it. You know, whatever the situation might be that needs to be done. The bike rentals are about $35 to $45 an hour, I think. Depends on who you talk to. I just had my e-bike up at Sam's place up in Los Olivos and was talking to him about it. He charges about $45 an hour. It depends on the bikes. They got some less expensive and more expensive bikes. And then you've got the policing activity. Now, I talked to a gentleman by the name of Sam Fertner down in Santa Barbara. He's on the city staff. It took them a while. They started looking into this in 2018. It's got a 3-year pilot program. They had to look at sidewalk space to allow for these hoops. You can't just put a hoop out there and block sidewalk, but you want to make it obvious so people can find it. So that's another issue. Now, down at the bottom it says potential increased liability insurance. It turns out that I found out later that B-Cycle handles all the liability insurance. And there's some businesses that don't want it, competition with the other bike shops. B-Cycle has here's B-Cycle's basic operation procedure. They go into a big city and they don't charge the city anything. They get all the revenue. We're not big enough to get enough revenue to support the bikes. That's why there's a price to put everything into here. So I went through the preview of the haunted house, and I ran into Mr. Sanchez, council member Buellton, and the city manager from Buellton was there, and we started talking about this stuff. He had just been down in Santa Barbara and tried it out. He loved it. He thought that was the coolest thing ever. He could rent a bike and just go ride around town. But one of the things that they brought up is, what if we did this as a valley idea? If you could get a bicycle path between Buellton and Solvang, and you start putting hoops in different places, now maybe we're getting to a size where B-Cycle would be willing to take it on without charging us. I don't know. But these were some of the concepts that came out of it. There is issues associated with it, obviously, that need to be resolved. I don't know that this is a good fit for the city for us to pull off on our own. But I wanted to present it to everybody because I kind of like the idea. It has some advantages and disadvantages. Like I said, the bicycle shops don't care for it. It's competition for them. I don't know about Petacycle or the trolley or anything else, but those are potential competition. So that's all I have to say. Oh, no, I'm gonna take it back. I talked to Encinitas. Encinitas has signed up, and B-Cycle's setting up down there. They haven't actually started. They're gonna start next month. The young lady that I talked to, Ms. Crystal Nahara, had been on vacation in San Antonio, Texas, and they have it down there, and she decided to try it down there, B-Cycle down there. So pressed the button, got the app, got on the bike, rode around in San Antonio, had a good time. The other thing she told me that was very interesting, B-Cycle happens to be owned by an electric bike company called Trek. Well, it turns out when they went out for bid on this, they went to, I think it was 6 different vendors. They chose B-Cycle for a number of reasons, but what was most important was the other remaining vendors are either out of business or changed their model to electric scooters or something else. So if we wanted to do this, we have to look very carefully at whoever we might want to pick for a vendor because they're not doing that well. And apparently it's not been completely successful. Denver had it there for a while. B-Cycle has this in 40 cities across the country. They're out of Madison, Wisconsin is their home office. And Denver stopped the system. They quit the rideshare program. And unfortunately, I couldn't get to anybody there that could tell me why. So I don't have that information. But that's my story in a nutshell. Questions, comments, good jokes?
And you're sticking to it?
Yeah, that's it.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
I have some thoughts about it. The first time that I rode an electric bicycle was to get from one point to Black Rock City to the other, and it beat waiting for an art car to give you a ride back to your camp. So yeah, they're great devices. It's a great alternative. It makes yeah, going from point A to point B to, yeah, completely different experience. They're a lot of fun. I checked them out in Santa Barbara this week. The fact that there are docks that receive them takes away the issue of having all of these different conveyances, such as scooters in other cities. You see them laying around all over the place, and yeah, it's pretty terrible. I had thought it's a really cool idea. If we were to implement it, we want to make sure that it's solving the problems that Councilmember Infante was addressing, which is getting less cars, getting more cars out of the road. We know that the cars that stay parked the longest are people that are working downtown. So if they have an alternative mode of transportation, well, that frees up parking for other people. I think you would have to see if an electric bike meets their needs. If they live somewhere in the valley, I think that would make sense. If they're coming from Lompoc or Santa Maria, that doesn't solve the issue. So it'd be great to do a survey and say, hey, is this something that you would be interested in? And then we could see about how facilitating it. If we look at how much it costs to bring this program into town, it breaks down the cost per bike to about $5,000. Those bikes cost about $1,500. So it would be more sensible to give a bike to anybody that's actually going to use them. And then you don't have the issue of having to do the cost maintenance. So I think this was interesting to look at. If we were to go into it, I would look at maybe partnering with local bikes, local bike shops that I know furnish those or rent them out. But first we would have to see if there is a need as far as for tourists to use them. There are bike rentals available. So yeah, those are some thoughts that I have.
Yeah, they're all valid concerns
Yeah.
that I've heard. The prices I was given was $2,500 a bike and $1,600 a dock.
Okay, I'm sure that there are different pricing. The lease that I saw was $1,500. I'm sure they go up for more. What I have seen with these bikes is that, as you said, these companies do tend to go out of business for whatever reason, and then it becomes nearly impossible to find parts and maintain them. So that is something to consider. I would love for them to be a standard thing, just like a car, where one breaks, well, you can find a mechanic anywhere that can fix them.
V-Cycle has a maintenance facility in Santa Barbara that takes care of all the bikes, repairs them, does all the fixing, refurbishes, whatever. The batteries, I understand, are good for about 30 miles of charge. The hoops can be hardwired, so you can charge directly, or you can just put a battery in them, in the hoop. It'll recharge the battery on the bike when the bike is put into the hoop. So somebody has to go out to those, but I understand that takes very little time and not very often. The batteries they put in them are apparently pretty stable. So these are all great questions, and I don't know, but it was an idea. I wanted everybody to hear about it.
Are there any other comments or questions?
No, I like the idea. My concern is what some of the merchants would think about 40 charging stations downtown, and where do you put them, and you're gonna get some pushback there. And I was just thinking, you've got regular bikes, then you have electric bikes, you have Surreys, and then they also rent bikes there. You've got Mokes, horse trolley, we don't have Segways anymore. We have 4 electric trolleys, pedicabs, pedestrians, and skateboards in town. How crowded will it get? I mean, 20 bikes and 40 stations is not gonna be a huge dip. I think that if there's demand for it, if people really want it, I'd be all for it and going forward. It doesn't cost us anything. If somebody else runs it, if people want to do that, I think the hardest part is where you put the charging stations or the placement of those. But if it doesn't cost us a lot and it's a draw to the town, then I have no problem. Not even no problem. I think it's neat.
It's a possibility, and my thought, same thing that Councilmember Clark just mentioned, was where do you put those docking stations? And I think if we think going forward that electric bikes rentals and something such as this might be something that would be going to the DRC and/or our advisory committee to figure out how we're gonna do our downtown. Because the sidewalks that we have really are not conducive to putting charging stations on them. And then you put them out in the street, that's, and, you know.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you, they're not conducive to bikes at all. I ride my bike every day and it's tough to find a place where to lock it, yeah.
Yeah, even just, you know, I'd be in favor of getting a few more of the racks, the bike racks that we need, maybe downtown a little bit, but, you know, the other thought is have we approached, Corey in town, you know, he's got electric bikes and electric bike rentals. What would he wanna do something, you know, he's an existing business that's been here for quite a while. And just to show some support that way, not that B-Cycle isn't a great business, but, you know, see if there's something that our locals could come up with. They're the ones that ride their bikes all the time, and they know the crowd, especially Corey, because of his business being bike rentals and, you know, taking tourists out on bike trips and things such as that, or Carmichael as well. So those are just some of my questions that I have related to it, but I mean, I think overall it'd be a good idea, but on the other hand, I see a lot, and maybe this is just my law enforcement end, more bikes out on the road, going faster, looking at apps on their handlebars, just doesn't appeal to me. So I'm sorry, as far as public safety, that's not a great idea.
Yeah, what are the liability issues and who's liable? The proprietor.
Yeah.
Well, in the case of the B-Cycle handles all the liability insurance.
Right.
But if we were to do it ourselves, that's a whole other issue, because and if the city sponsors it, I don't know what the city liability is. And I was also told by Tracy Beard that there is a new bike rental shop coming into town.
Right.
So that's even another one that we would be potentially interfering with an idea like this.
I'm a little concerned about the city getting into competition with private enterprise.
I definitely.
Maybe we could rent no muffler Harleys too.
No muffler Harleys. Is there any public comment? Anybody out there that would like to speak on anything? Lieutenant, what are your thoughts? Just the more electric bikes out there?
I think we're just a lot.
Am I opening that up?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Yes, hello?
Hi, this is Tracy Beard. How are you this evening?
Hi,
From
Tracy.
the Solving Chamber of Commerce. Yes, we have a new bike company that's in town at some of the wineries already, and they have 5 bikes. Melanie and Jonathan do already at 2 different wine places, and yes, they are working with Corey, and we have 2 new bike shops in town also that sell and are renting out electric bikes.
Thank you for that information.
And I think before we move forward as a city, I'd like to look at the private sector of what they're doing and what we're doing in town with them already.
I would agree with that.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's a little hard on this, but thank you for taking my call this evening.
Thank you for calling.
Hello, my name is Joanne Ricci, and I'd like to make a comment regarding this.
Yes, go ahead.
I do not own a car. I walk, I'm a pedestrian, I walk and occasionally bike. And I think this is an interesting idea for all of the benefits that were previously stated. However, we have a dearth of infrastructure in our city for sidewalks, bike paths, and bike lanes. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been walking on a sidewalk, and I've been almost taken over by bikes who ride on pathways and sidewalks, because there are no there are few lanes and few safe ways to get from downtown to even if you're heading to if you're heading out of town, it's very difficult. You can't get I've seen lots of people biking to get to Buellton. So I think this is an interesting idea, but I would really implore the council to really think more comprehensively around alternative opportunities for reducing traffic by more pedestrian-friendly streets, by an increased pathway, bike pathways, as Councilman Infante said, you know, it would be great to have a pathway from here to Buellton or to Los Olivos or Santa Ynez. And, you know, we attract a lot of people biking from all over the world that want to come here and bike. So I think this is an interesting idea, but I think you really need to think about this much more comprehensively. And also, as Councilman Arona said, to really identify the needs in the community, not just from a business perspective, but from a resident's perspective, from a youth perspective, and really think much more holistically as you make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comments? Our esteemed Police Chief Green.
Council. I think Ms. Ricci pretty much took everything I was thinking and laid it out there, so thank you for that. We have some things that we would look at in depth, I think, before we go down that road, on all sorts of scales. And the last thing I would remind everyone is 21-200.5 of the Vehicle Code, which is DUI on a bike. That is still there, and we have done it, and it's still out there. And so when you have people out wine tasting, for instance, or out having a good time, and you have that one driver that's dedicated to doing that, and you have 3 passengers that are enjoying themselves, if you go with the bike route, you might not have the same equation. And I'm not saying that people are all going to get drunk on a bike. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying it's something to consider. So, I'll leave it at that. I think further research from the safety perspective would have to be looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are working on a general plan and working
Yes.
on our
Let me make one last
transportation
comment,
element.
if I may.
Yes.
Out of, I was talking to the gentleman in Santa Barbara. I asked him if there had been any theft. And he said they lost 25 bikes across 9 months, were either stolen or left. Now they've recovered all but 4 of them. There was 3 collisions. 2 went to the hospital, 1 was just bent up biker. So it's not without problems. There are those issues. So what the lieutenant says is absolutely true. We have to consider the safety part of it. There's a lot of parts to this. My objective was to bring it up. I'll let you think about it.
And other cities do it. Something to look at.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah. I would be interested to see if people that work in downtown Solvang would be interested in a program like this. More so than the visitors. There are bike rentals for the visitors, but we should look at alternatives to riding your car back and forth and parking it all day on our busy streets. I would like to see that.
If it was done as part of the parking program also, what if we put 90-minute free parking or limited parking only on all the parking spaces around the businesses? So the tourists are gonna be there for an hour and a half or so, that's fine, but the employees that can't stay there all day long, they're gonna get a ticket. Which brings up enforcement again, and that's another issue, but still, it's part of a holistic idea across this. It's a way to look at it.
Yeah.
One more follow-up on the liability. You say the company has a liability. I'd like to ask the city manager, since it would be a city program, would there be a liability issue even if they say it's going to be absorbed by the owner or the businesses?
It is a contract. So the contractor would have it. I'd have to ask the attorney.
Well, it's gonna depend on, the nature of the contract with the vendor. We can put in indemnification requirements, we can put in insurance requirements, but you've probably heard me say at least once over the years, anyone with $500 in a typewriter can file a lawsuit, so you try to minimize the risk to the city to the maximum extent that you can, and recognizing that someone may file a lawsuit anyway.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for those final comments. There's no motion on this one?
There's no motion in that one. Just to clarify though, is there any desire to come back with any follow-up on this item from the council? Or we are working on the general plan update, so we will be looking at all of the mobility questions and how our limited space is utilized between cars, pedestrians, and bicycles. That will be the process over the next year.
I think it might be something that we'd want to make sure that gets put there as a discussion item on the general plan.
Bicycling overall and the mobility questions will be part of the considerations. Right on.
Councilmember Clark, are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to look and see what other cities, tourist cities of our size have done with something like that. Not so much a Santa Barbara, a larger place, but your Mammoth Lakes, or I know they don't do that in the winter. But other towns like us, how they get along with it.
I haven't been able to find anybody of our size or city nature that's predominantly tourism that I can talk to, not yet. And I've gotta quit.
We'll task
You know what,
with
after
that.
tonight, we'll hear from some of the people in the community, we might get a few emails on this, and so let's just gauge it and go forward.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to take a 5-minute break, if we could, before moving on to the next item. So it is now 8:52, we'll come back at 8:57. Thank you. We're
the first time in the history of city council meetings that has happened. No, she's asking to wait to start the meeting because she's finishing.
Way to go, Mr. Clark.
Somebody call Jennifer Best.
All right, are we ready? All right, we're back. Call the meeting back to order at 8:59. And we're moving on to item number 8. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Fiscal year 22-24 financial plan development process and schedule. Approve fiscal year 22-24 financial plan development process and schedule.
Thank you. So this item is to have a discussion about the next financial plan development process and procedure, and to just get your buy-in and your preferences and how you would like to go through that process. There's various levels of engagements that cities choose to have throughout processes like this. With the last financial plan, we transitioned from annual budget to a 2-year financial plan development, which allows us as staff to better align our operations and our capital improvement program, and also have a little bit of a longer outlook in terms of goals and priorities of the city. So you as council will be developing or working on the next 2-year financial plan, which will be the 22-24 financial plan development. So it's a process that starts around January and then runs through June 30, which is when we need to have the budget adopted for both the operating and the capital program for just the 1 year. But we also want to set the goals and the strategic goals, the goals of the council for the entire 2-year financial plan process. So we'll start in January by bringing forth financial forecasts, which will inform you about your availability of resources. We'll also be engaging in some level of community outreach, which can be as minimal as just holding the public meetings during regular council meetings, or it can be more involved where council could have potentially a special workshop set up for it and specifically invite public to come and comment during that time period and just have a more robust discussion about this. You could also choose to have, for example, an online survey to get some feedback about service levels and the priorities from the community as part of this process. And then, of course, internally at the same time, we'll be engaging with all the departments, all the divisions and staff to learn more about operations, what needs there are to achieve those goals. So those processes will be happening at the same time, which then wraps into the financial plan development and finally the budget adoption. So just to go in a little bit more detail through these pieces, in January to February timeframe, we will be bringing an item to you, which will be the financial forecast for the major operating funds. So that would be your general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund, our operating major funds. You can have a goal setting and strategic planning session workshop. This would be done every 2 years. So this year you develop in a 2-year financial plan. So this strategic planning would be part of that. And of course, as I mentioned, the city manager meets with all departments and divisions to review funding needs for operations and the capital improvement program throughout this process. Then in March and April, staff will be preparing the preliminary budget for operating programs and the CIP. That will be based on the feedback that we receive from you regards to your goals and the strategic priorities. Once we receive that feedback from you and what the priorities are, also hear from the community about what the priorities are and desires, then within the available funding and revenue streams, we'll prepare recommendations back to you as the preliminary budget, which will be presented to you in May. We'll take any additional comments from you in May with the preliminary budget presentation and adjust the budget as needed. and bring it back to you in June for final adoption. So the reason this discussion here is on the council agenda today, I would like to receive the comments from you in any direction and then approve the financial plan development and process and schedule. But as part of that, some of the questions are to get direction from you about your preferences for the goal setting workshop. Would you like to hold it during just regular council meetings, or would you like to schedule a more robust workshop and invite the community to provide input for the financial plan? Is there an interest to have any kind of survey opportunity for the public? And then would you like to just have the workshop be facilitated by staff, city manager, or would you like to hire a facilitator, for example, which is also an option? And just any other additional questions and comments that you may have about the financial plan development. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions of the staff report at this time?
I don't have any questions, but I like the idea of, input from the community, so anything, and I don't know that we need to hire somebody to come in and do that. I think we can do that with our staff. And, but I would like to give the public an ample opportunity to come in and say their piece.
Would that be something in January then? Or February? Either of those 2 months?
Either of those 2 months would work, January or February.
Do you all think maybe a special session just by itself?
I would prefer that.
Something
Yeah.
like that?
Otherwise, this would be, if you
Yeah.
put it onto a regular agenda.
Yeah,
it's just-
maybe one in
it's gonna drag out.
January and one in February, middle of the week, or what are you thinking?
Do you think you can get that much community interest for something that's a year to 2 years away?
If you tell them there's money in it for their particular projects, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I agree with Jim and also with you, Ms. Rona, that community participation, it would be vital. And I also don't think we need a facilitator. If you have the time to do it, I'd rather not spend the money on it. This is some steps we just need to take.
Yeah, if you think about it, I've got an opportunity, there's been some discussions with the Theater Fest about what we're gonna do for funding for them. We just heard from the senior center, we're gonna do funding for them. We've had the broadband and approving, this funding, and I don't know what else is gonna come out of that.
Oh, there's that elephant, the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, the elephant, I keep forgetting the elephant, yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking sometime maybe mid-January, or start beginning of January, mid-January possibly. Middle of the week or a weekend. I don't know what would be best for everyone, maybe a Wednesday?
If you want to get community engagement, maybe a weekend is better, or maybe a Friday afternoon. But then again, if we're gonna do middle of the week, we're gonna get a lot of engagement from the business community, because it's their slow time, but we might not get a lot of engagement from other sectors of the community.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something for the business community. Their busy time would be the weekends, technically, although if we're doing it in January and February, that is our slow time, so.
Right.
Maybe we could do one during the midweek and then one.
On a Saturday morning?
Saturday morning or something.
Like at 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Those seem to have been pretty good with turnouts.
Yeah, maybe one in January in the middle of the week, or vice versa, just one in each month possibly.
I would just suggest the first one would probably just be input then, and then the
Mm.
second one would be when you would actually
That's
set
a
the
workshop.
goals.
Okay.
Okay.
We could go forward with it.
That gives me enough direction, so we'll schedule a workshop specifically for the financial plan development in mid-January, sometime in the evening, which would be just an input opportunity. And then probably in February, hold another one on a weekend, which would be your session to set the goals, and I'm happy to do that with you without hiring a facilitator.
All right, would we want to take public comment right now on this? Do we?
Yes.
I see one in the house. Didn't know if Ms. Beard would want to say anything, but that's okay. All right.
There's one member of the public
There
on
is
Zoom as well.
On Zoom. Are they wanting to say anything regarding this? Any comments? Nothing? Okay, bring it back. So you have our direction on that.
So with this, I was asking for your approval, so if there's a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-24 financial level development process and schedule.
I can make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 to 24 financial plan development process and schedule. That's directed by council. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Verona.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Yurick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Now, moving on to item number 9. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Marketing request for proposals, contract content. A, receive Tourism Advisory Committee recommendations for a marketing contract. B, authorize city manager to negotiate a contract extension with IDK, Cogs and Marvel through June 30th, 2022. Approve budget amendment adjustment in the amount of $300,000.
Thank you. I will present the report. So as you know, you have passed an ordinance forming the TAC, the Tourism Advisory Committee, whose role and responsibility is to advise you on all things tourism, which includes contract oversight as well as recommendations for the programs that they and you would like to see included in the marketing program. They have been meeting, had about 3 discussions on the topic of developing a request for proposals or the content elements of the next contract. When they met at the last meeting, they provided the following recommendations for your consideration, which was essentially stating, or that was their recommendation, is to extend the contract with IDK through June 30, 2022 for another 6 months. The reason I am also placing the Cogs and Marvel is because IDK, or Scott Shoemake, has now joined this larger company named Cogs and Marvel, which is why you see some new members of the team joining when you receive your updates. The recommended funding by the TAC was to maintain $50,000 per month investment into the next 6 months, which will equate to an expenditure of another $300,000 over the next 6 months. They also discussed that over the next 6 months, they would like to continue to learn about the existing marketing programs, oversee this contract, and also learn more and work with Visit SYV and Solving Chamber to kind of evaluate all of the marketing efforts comprehensively. They have committed that they will provide additional recommendations to the City Council by February of 2022 in order to have sufficient time to issue an RFP before the summertime extension expires. They did begin coming up with some of the blocks that they would see in the contract, and these are their preliminary recommendations. Around branding, the conversation was about the concept of City of Solving as a city versus a village. A village was kind of the preferred definition of how the City of Solving is seen, and also the Village of Lights was brought up. So with that conversation, there was also some conversation about the signs at entrances of the city as part of that brand. They also discussed the special events, and that they would like to continue to discuss how many special events should be taking place in the City of Solvang. Everybody agreed that the social media should continue as an effort. Website should continue as an effort, of course, updating and maintaining that. Under your current contract, IDK is supposed to bring that completely up to date and update the branding of the website. That should happen before the December 31. They also want to see some advertising, both in print, TV commercials, videos of the village. We are doing videos of the village. Currently, we are not doing print or TV commercials. They want to see Solvang as a filming destination. So Solvang Village is an ideal location for filming commercial, features films. They want to see some direct marketing. PR should continue. Tours was an idea of Old Mission, Elwarpa Museum. They want to see the visitor center continue, and there was some discussion of preference to have the marketing, the visitor center being overseen by probably the same party, to where those need to be integrated. You already have the visitor center contract in place through the end of the summer. They also want to revisit whether trade shows is something that City of Solvang should be engaged in. Currently we are not, it's only being done through Visit SYD. And then there was some discussion about looking at markets and reestablishing the international market. So those were the comments as of today from the TAC. But their recommendation at the end of the day is to go ahead and negotiate an extension of contract with IDK through June 30.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is the TAC, and maybe this is for Dave, are they required to be a Brown Act committee, or is that our choice?
It was your choice in setting it up. They could certainly, if they had created themselves or the city manager had created the TAC as opposed to a formal action of the council, then they would not be covered by the Brown Act. But because they were formed by the council, they are a Brown Act body.
Can the council reverse that part of the decision and still keep the committee in place?
You would have to repeal the ordinance setting up the TAC and then give direction to staff to create the TAC in that situation.
I only say that, and I bring it up because it's very difficult for a committee like that, you know, with the restrictions that you only talk to, you know, one person without going out, and I think they lose a lot of ability to talk amongst themselves, especially if they're out talking, you know, to the community or talking with owners, business owners and so forth, and it limits them to their meetings. And like I say, you know, you can, same restrictions we have, but we're a body that makes the decision. They're a body that's doing investigation. And I would like to see if there's a way that we can give them a little more leeway in that regard.
Well, short of rescinding the ordinance, it is kind of baked in at this point that they're going to have to be a Brown Act body because it was created by formal action of the city council. So if the council wants to provide direction to repeal that ordinance, we can certainly do that. And then staff can set up the TAC, and that might be something that that we could take a look into. But the TAC would probably be providing advice to the city manager in that situation, through to the city council, or the group could come and meet as any other community group would come and present things to the city council. But it would not be a formal Brown Act body if the ordinance went away.
Can I add to that? And then you would also
You may.
thank you. Before I wait for an answer, we would also have to make that resolution item, because to change anything we're doing as a city, we need to open that to public comment as well, with notification, correct?
Well, you'd give direction to staff to bring back a
Correct.
repealer of that resolution. The public would have an opportunity to speak on it at that point. But that was not on the agenda for tonight, so that's not something you can give direction on,
That's what I was
other
wondering,
than
yeah.
to bring it back.
Are there any other comments? Councilmember Infante.
I noticed on one of your, on the slides, you were talking about one of the things the TAC had said was making the visitor center fireplace real, or something like that, functional. I forget what the word was. My question is, isn't that a separate contract with IDK and not part of the?
That's correct. As I mentioned, the visitor center, well, there's two things. The visitor center contract through June 30 is with IDK to operate the visitor center. The visitor center rebranding and refreshment is actually under their current marketing contract, which expires in December. And there's $20,000 for that, and they're working on it.
Oh, okay, so they could actually do whatever they wanna do with the fireplace? And that's
Correct.
part of this contract that we're dealing with?
No, it's part of the already existing contract and the scope of work. So
Okay.
that will be done before this contract that we're talking about even moves forward.
Does the contract that we're talking about have the requirement in it for a local representative of IDK?
The current contract with IDK does not have that requirement. It is definitely something that you can require for the next contract negotiation if you choose to extend or to enter into negotiations with IDK for the next 6 months.
I'd ask the rest of the council members, but one of the things that we hear from time to time is people in the city can't always get hold of Scott. And that's the only person they know how to get, you know, who they wanna try and get hold of. We need to have a local representative, I think, that people can get in touch with, and a local phone number, and put it on the website so people know how to get in touch with the organization that's gonna be setting up events, doing marketing, all those types of things for the city. Your concern, Mr. Clark?
I'm just wondering if you want residents calling Scott when he's trying to do a job, because Scott answers to us.
Well, no, that's the point. They are trying to call Scott. And and so you're saying they shouldn't have a contact?
I'm just wondering, is that something you want to put on Scott's plate, to be taking input from residents when he works for the city, through the proper, I'm throwing it out, the proper channels. I mean,
Gotcha.
I know he's got a job to do, I know he handles other cities, whether we want individual residents calling a contractor to the city, which is basically what it is, when in essence, maybe those questions should be coming to us, and I don't know that, I don't know the answer to this.
Do you want to be called every time that somebody wants to bring in a guest artist, every time that somebody wants to throw a little festival somewhere?
No, I just,
No, we don't want to, you didn't get that.
Yeah, like I understand the concern, but I also think, and I also know I get comments from people that say, hey, I've been trying to reach IDK, I've been trying to reach Scott, there's this great event that I want to pitch in, and I just need help promoting it, we'll do it. And I do get the comments that that's not always the case.
Does he need a liaison in the city, you think?
What's that?
Does he need a liaison?
I think part of the scope of work is to promote any event that is happening in Solvang, not just the events that they produce themselves. So whatever has to happen, if he's too busy, maybe he needs somebody whose job is just to take all of that input and make sure that it gets through the real channels. But there can't be that gap of communication between people trying to make things happen in Solvang and then falling through the cracks because they can't get a hold of Scott. And I certainly, I'll do my best to facilitate that communication, but we're also worrying about other things, and our city manager is also managing all sorts of other things. So
You don't necessarily want to dump everything on the city manager.
no, that's because at that point, then what's the point on having a
Maybe we dump it on the
contractor
city
that's supposed
clerk.
to handle this if they don't handle it?
Maybe we let the city clerk be the point of contact for events.
During elections.
I'm moving over. Shell practice,
Sorry.
Are there any other?
There needs to be a
We've opened a can of worms here.
No, it should be, if we're spending nearly $1 million on this contractor, they could at least pick up the phone or answer the emails when somebody says, hey, I have a great idea, can you help me make it happen? So on that note, while I have the word, I do have another comment. I saw that in their scope of work is to manage all of the social media accounts of the city of Solvang. And I understand that they've done a great job on developing a following on Facebook, on Instagram, like they've done a great job. I know that we also have a Twitter that it's not used, and to me, the city of Solvang online, social media presence is different from the Solvang USA presence. One of them, it's mostly for marketing, it's targeting all of our visitors. The other one should be for residents and people that are interested on things that are more community oriented or service oriented or things like that. And if we wanna dump it all on them, if they wanna say, hey, in top of our marketing, you're also gonna be in charge of this aspect of communication between our residents and community and the city, then that's fine. But those are two different jobs.
May I clarify that? So the IDK only manages social media that's relevant to the marketing effort, so it's only Solvang USA type of Facebook, etc. We do have a Facebook for the city of Solvang, which is not very active now, but if there was a desire to have more communication coming out of the city, we would work on that from the city's side and not through this marketing effort.
I'm just bringing it up because in the presentation it said that they would handle all City of Solvang social media accounts, and I don't think that's what they're doing or what they should do at this point.
And I think the comment was meant to just talk about the social media that IDK is managing, not the city government social media.
Okay.
Who's responsible for the events calendar on cityofsolvang.com?
For the events, so we don't, we maintain our news flash. We don't have, the Parks or Recreation has its calendar for the events that are recreation sourced and managed. So like the Haunted House is an example, the Turkey Trot, the
But are those, if I go to City of Solvang and I go to the calendar, are they on there? I don't see much of anything on there when I.
we have the recreation calendar that's being put out on quarterly basis that does list all of that. It's also available on the website. But those are definitely different calendars for what's happening as far as marketing events versus the recreation events. So there could be more collaboration. That's something that we are working on right now to make sure that nobody's stepping on each other's toes. We know when all of the events are happening, so we are working on, internally at least as staff and consultant, working off of the same set of calendar. So we've established that, and we can definitely continue to push out that information more through our website as well, as far as what's happening in town and when.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have that on the City of Solvang website, some of the events that are going on that are listed or not listed, because I know I went in a week before Solvang USA regarding the Wine Country Half Marathon. There was nothing advertised anywhere. And then the next thing you know, after I said something, and 3 days later, oh yeah, I've had it on it. No. So there's a huge disconnect between IDK, as Mayor Arona had mentioned, that a lot of these special events that have been here, they're not getting service like I think they should, and what we're paying IDK to do. You know, we used to have it in-house. I'm not saying we bring it back in-house, but we took care of all of those events for a lot of years until IDK was awarded the contract. And
well, even some of the events that aren't IDK, for instance, the Shred Day, isn't on our calendar.
Right. Well, yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing, these are public things that the residents ought to be able to find out what's going on in Solvang. The Veterans Day event that Councilmember Clark was talking about isn't on the calendar. So, I'm getting us a little off track, and I apologize, but that events calendar needs to be maintained. And
I know the chamber put out the advertising on the Shred Day, because that's the only Shred Day that's going on now. So that was on their website, and they kept that thing going, but it was
And I
not.
would suggest that that type of coordination should happen at the city level, and it's not something that's part of the contract with
Yeah,
IDK.
Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was gonna mention about the special events, and I understand, I think the local contact, it still makes some sense, but right now, it's Scott that should be getting those and answering the calls.
Well, if you want, I mean, part of the, and that's, if that's the scope that you would like to continue going forward, part of the scope with IDK is for them to provide that service of managing events or helping them set up, accepting applications and processing that application, dealing with all the logistics, working with groups that want to have an event in the city of Solvang. They deal with all of the events that are with attendance of over 1,000 people, so larger events. So if that's going to continue to be within their scope of work, you could potentially require that they have a local representative available for that specific scope. They do have a local representative right now on the visitor center part of the contract, but that's a different contract and a different scope. They don't have a local representative for events management.
So, so do I understand correctly that IDK only handles event applications if there are 1,000 attendees or more?
Correct,
Is
that's
that
how it's set
correct?
up right now.
Okay, so if it's 500 or less, who processes?
So we've been handling it at the city staff level.
Okay, so
if
city
it's-
staff processes
yes.
that.
For example, like the parade for the school for Halloween, that was handled internally.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Is that identified someplace on the website? That's how you do ask for an event permit?
Yes, so we have on our City of Solvang website how to apply for an event, and there is a link to 2 separate applications, 2 different pathways. For the larger events, it sends it to IDK through their Solvang USA portal, and for smaller events, it's just is a contact to city staff.
And I know on that, because I've gone through that, trying to figure out where people will go, and Scott is the contact via email as far as the large events. So that's what he's put on, but, so, just FYI for everyone.
So I'd like to bring up a question. How do we feel in general about international marketing? There's been, I know that Solvang CBB, the executive director, used to go to these trade shows and they would pitch Solvang as a destination to people out of the country. And we just saw our numbers. It looks like our TOT is up. So, and we've mostly been focused on travel within a few hours. So I think it's worth considering how much do we want to spend on that. I would just hate to set up a budget and then I'd like to see most of that money go, you know, not only to the overhead of the contractor, but also the quality of events that they produce. I would hate to see that because now they're spending all this time on all these trade shows that we are not getting the quality of events that, you know, Solvang deserves.
When these items were brought up at the TAC for reestablishing connection, were all of these items something that Scott was present for when they went through it?
No, so we are, because Scott has indicated desire to apply for the next round of RFP, we are keeping the 2 processes separate. So when they discuss the scope of the RFP, the current contractor, IDK, and applicant for the future is not present, so that they're not defining the terms of future work.
So it's a possibility that there may be some of these things that won't even happen based on budgeting of what we're giving them.
Correct, so the recommendation is to extend or TAC recommendation is to extend the contract through June 30, so that some of the ongoing efforts can continue as another part of their consideration. So all of the videos, for example, that are being filmed can be pushed out during the slow months of January, February, March. But the precise contract terms will still need to be negotiated with IDK between now and the end of their contract, if that's what you would like to do.
Contract terms, remember, it's an extension of the existing contract, but we can still
Correct.
adjust the terms.
So the existing contract actually has a lot of value that goes to very specific tasks that will already have happened. So the city spent $120,000, for example, on, or $100,000 of that was the video production of the 7 different videos. That work will have been completed by the time the current contract expires. So there could be some other different undertaking that takes place in the next year, or you could fund the next contract at a lower amount, for example, just do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I must have misspoken. First step is we need to extend the contract to June, end of June, right?
You need to give direction to negotiate the contract through June, and you can either give me authority to do that, or I would be happy to come back to you with the terms of the contract.
Okay. If you negotiate an extension to a contract, are you allowed to change the articles or the requirements in the contract at that time?
Yes.
That's legit?
Yes.
It's all subject to negotiation on the extension, so
Okay.
they can say no or they can say yes, and it's part of the negotiation.
Fair enough, that was my question, thank you.
Any other comments?
Nope.
I'll say it would be interesting to tag along on one of those trade shows just to get an idea of what they do, because I just know that they go, but I have no idea what it is that they do, where they go, what they entail. We just get these reports of this is what's been happening and it's wonderful. Just a thought. Anyway, I think it makes sense to extend the contract. It sounds like, between TAC and us, we're still figuring out what it is that we need exactly. I don't think it was quite clear what they were providing as a vendor. We're still figuring things out, so I would love the extra time to say, this is the scope of work. And I think TAC is making great recommendations. These are the things that we would like to see.
With the recommendation for reestablishing a connection with the international market, I understand and know that the SCVB was really pushing Asia, so China and all that. I mean, they even brought in folks on staff that were Chinese speaking to make sure that they could service the needs of the Chinese tourists. Is there any direction on who we're trying to establish a connection with, reestablish? Is it that connection, or is it just global?
Well, to that note, Mayor Hurry, I have to say, people see Solvang and they say, oh, there's lots of Asian tourists, and they don't realize where they're coming from. These are very different markets. The people that ride on those big buses that come in, park, spend an hour because they have other 20 locations to visit, are very different from the college students that are having their parents visit for a couple of weeks and they're traveling up and down the coast checking out California. And it's very different from the visitors that come directly from China during, say, the Chinese New Year. So it's not, I think it's a market that people need to understand. It's not just pitching out to the Asian market. It's a very diverse market depending on who you're talking about. So I think whoever ends up doing this needs to understand that. That's all.
Right. Well, that was what I was asking, is just, I understand they're different, so I just didn't know if, is that what they're trying to reestablish? Did that ever get discussed?
So there was some discussion on this, and I would like to just clarify that these initial comments from marketing components are really meant to be the beginning of the discussion for the RFP development, so 6 months out. It's not something that they're set, or these were not set recommendations, the final recommendations from the TAC. But some of the discussion there regarding international market was the Asian market and whether that's the next viable step. There was also discussion about just international markets in terms of European tourists. So it was a broader thought, but there was some belief that that's a market that we haven't been targeting. Obviously, there's been COVID, but as we move past in the next year, post this extension in the RFP, that should be a consideration to consider as an additional market.
And then, I guess just going back to special events, because that's always been near and dear to my heart, but the number of events that we have each year, including Danish Days, we had at one time council approval for grandfathered events that had already been here probably 12 years ago. And I'm pretty sure every single one of them are still going on. Are they considering the Rancheros Visitore Parade an event? Because this coming year is the year that we have two events on the same day, the Wine Country Half Marathon and Rancheros in the morning and Rancheros Visitores in the afternoon. This was the, it's happened every 5 years, I think, or 6 years, it happens on the same exact day. It's the day prior to Mother's Day. So I know that what we just had, the Wine Country Half Marathon, typically, what didn't happen in October, it always happened the Saturday prior to Mother's Day in May. And so next year, I know already, they're planning on doing that, but just FYI, so is the Rancheros Visitores, they're planning to come back in May as well, so we'd have two events the same day.
More than likely.
Yeah, if everything pans out like everyone is hoping it will. Obviously for COVID, they had made their changes going down the road, but.
So to clarify, to answer that question, the way we've been working, it was under the assumption that any long grandfather extending events are already approved by the council, and then only new events, if needed, would be brought for approval. But those long-standing events, we've been working under the premise that they're approved as ongoing.
Okay, that's. Well, I know projecting out, that's what's going to happen if, at this time, Wine Country had already said they wanted to go back to what they had in May. And then that is the same day that the Rancheros would be happening. So 2022 would be the perfect storm.
Yeah,
Two events.
Rancheros won't be till about 1 p.m.
Right. But it was just different road closures in the same day, and it's happened. This will be the third time in 17 years or 18 years.
Okay, thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Anyway, do we have any public comment related to this item? Tracy? I don't have the speaker slip up here, but please feel free.
I'm going to try to take myself away from the TAC and just say I didn't go to the meeting for personal reasons last week. At the same time, I don't agree with, at this time, not having an RFP and making a contract go forward for another 6 months. I truly believe that by January and February, an RFP can be put out by January and one can be had by February. And I think that's been the concern of the community. How is community public money spent? And as you all talk about it, we need to really dig in more, I feel, of how public money is spent for all tourism and to look at our infrastructure of tourism more so. And I truly do believe that we don't take care of our tourism once they're here. We look old and tired, and we need to maybe look at our tourism money being spent on our infrastructure for our community in general. And that would just be what I'd like to say as far as my chamber has looked at, I've looked at, and just talking to my business community is all I'd like to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. I know there's no one else in the audience, so bring it back to anybody on Zoom that would like to make any comments regarding the marketing proposal for a contract? Seeing none, bring it back for final comments.
Yeah, I may come back on the issue of the TAC and the committee setup. I don't wanna step on them, I haven't had a conversation with them, but I did get wind of some frustration because of the restrictions that they have for a committee. That doesn't necessarily come up and speak to the public, so I'll save that for another meeting.
Any final comments before?